One Piece, Dawn in the Darkness. Chapter 1. Windmill Village. In a very small port town. A blonde-haired boy, wearing black shorts and a red t-shirt, sitting on the stone steps. The boy looked up at the sky. The afterglow of the setting sun shone on the sea level, dyeing the sea orange-red. He closed his eyes and enjoyed the sea breeze at this moment. Lucci, a gentle voice came from behind. He opened his eyes and turned to look at the person in front of him. She was wearing light blue trousers, an orange mesh top with black sleeves, and a yellow plaid headscarf wrapped around her green hair. "Hey, Makina, what's wrong?" Lucci looked at the person in front of him. "Did you know Mr. Carp was coming over?" She covered her mouth and chuckled. Grandpa, he thought of the tall marine and the iron fist he loved, and couldn't help but shudder. "What is that old man doing here?" he said loudly. "Lucci, how can you disrespect your lovely grandpa?" A rude shout came from the side. Hearing this sound, his legs couldn't help but retreat, and he immediately turned around to run back, but it was obvious that a faster fist stopped him and hit him on the head. He squatted down holding his head, and couldn't help but feel that sooner or later he would be killed by this crazy old man. "Grandpa, why did you hit me?" he asked with a painful face. The marine in front of him held something in one hand and inserted his little finger into his nostril with the other hand, saying with disdain, "Lucci, is this the attitude you have when you see your dear grandpa?" Makina went forward to check on Lucci's condition and asked worriedly, "Lucci, are you okay?" "I'm fine, Sister Makina." Lucci rubbed his head and stood up. "Grandpa, what's in your hand?" Lucci stared at the package in Garp's hand curiously. "Lucci, come meet your brother." He held the child tightly, but at the same time he was very careful to prevent the child from falling with his movements, Garp said, reaching out to show Lucci the child. "Hey! Really?" Lucci asked curiously and excitedly. He stared at the baby in the package curiously. The child was so small and fragile. He poked his cheek curiously with his hand and watched him sleeping sweetly. He suddenly felt soft in his heart, thinking, "Is this my brother? My family?" Lucci remembered what the children in the village had said before, "He is a monster, we should not play with him, and my mother secretly said that his father is a dangerous person and a criminal. We can't stay with him." This resulted in him always being alone, and could only look at the sea alone. Even at home, he was always alone in his room at night. Even if he was scared, he had to be alone to comfort himself. He didn't understand why they said his father was a criminal and an evil man. He also didn't understand why his grandfather didn't let him talk to people in the village or go to the village. He couldn't figure it out. But now he has a younger brother, he is no longer alone, he will protect him well. He wants to stay with him forever, because being alone is more terrible than pain. He doesn't want to enter that state again, he wants to protect him forever, protect him from being hurt, don't let him feel this painful loneliness, want him to be happy. "Lucci, you must take good care of your younger brother. His name is Monkey D. Luffy, and he will live with you from now on." Garp touched his head and said to him with a heavy face. "Makina, please take good care of them for me. I have something to do recently and you may not see me for a long time." Garp laughed and waved his hand and walked towards the beach. Mr. Cap Makina looked confused, but nodded firmly. "Lucci, take care of yourself and Luffy. I'm going back first. Next time we meet, call me Grandpa," Garp said angrily and gestured with his fist in front of his chest. "Got it, you old man!" Lucci shouted. Cap laughed and jumped into the boat. "Hey! Lucci, let's take Luffy to the tavern and get him some food," said Makaro, looking at the baby in his arms with a gentle face. "Okay. Let's go!" Lucci shouted excitedly. He couldn't wait to run in front of Makina to explore the way for them, looking back at them from time to time. Makina looked at him with a smile, she knew they would be a very close pair of brothers. "Luffy, good boy." Makina held the baby and teased him while asking Lucci to help get the bottle. "Lucci, can you help your sister get the milk under the cabinet?" "Oh." Lucci quickly handed the milk to Makina. Looking at the baby giggling in Makina's arms, his heart suddenly softened. He realized that from this moment on, he would give everything for Luffy. They will stick together every day from now on. Luffy will follow Lucci like a little duck, and Lucci will protect Luffy like a hen. Chapter 2. Luffy is already 7 months old. He can sit up now, and he started crawling a few days ago. Luffy is always crawling around and always accidentally crawls to dangerous places. He needs them to watch him all the time. Maybe he should make or buy him a baby stroller, so that he can walk without falling. Luffy is growing up, and watching him change every day, he wants to record every moment of his life. According to Makina, Luffy should stand up in a few months, and start learning to walk within a few months of standing up, and he wants to save these. The sky was cloudless in the early morning. Colorful balloons were floating in the sky above the forest, and the sighs of children could be heard from below the balloons. Luffy is 3 years old now, and Lucci is almost 7 years old. In the past 2 years, Garp came to give him special naval training from time to time. During this period, he was either called to fight with wild beasts or thrown into the center of the forest by Garp for a month to let him walk out by himself, or thrown to the bottom of the valley to survive alone. Now, a balloon was tied to him on the cliff and he floated in the sky at will. Lucci couldn't help but sigh, but now he has to find a way to get down. Don't fall into the water. There should be a forest below. Lucci thought and tried to struggle down, but there were too many balloons and he couldn't go down. Lucci stroked his chin and thought, it seems that he needs to get rid of some balloons. As the number of balloons becomes fewer and fewer, Lucci is getting closer and closer to the forest, and finally he successfully falls on a tree. It seemed like he had never been to this forest before. It looked like it should be the forest on the other side of Dawn Island. He had to get out as soon as possible. He had to go back early, otherwise Luffy would definitely cry again. But how could he get out? The forest was too big. Yoshi, let's just move forward, there will always be a way out, Lucci thought optimistically. After walking for an unknown amount of time, a strong light appeared in front of him. It should be the exit. Lucci ran towards it quickly. When he came out, he didn't expect to find it was a ruin. He never knew the other side of the island was like this. The air was filled with fog and a rotten smell was everywhere. Looking at the chaotic, dirty, and lifeless crowd in front of him and the murder and treasure-stealing incidents that could happen at any time, Lucci hid in the corner and observed silently. This place seemed very dangerous. Stop right there, you little bastard. How dare you steal my money? A tall adult man was chasing a boy about the same age as Lucci. However, the child's speed was not as fast as that of an adult man, and the boy was quickly caught. How dare you run? Return my treasure to me now. Bah! I stole this and I can't give it back to you, the boy struggled to break free. Lucci looked at them, quietly pulled out a wooden stick from the garbage next to him, then rushed over quickly, and attacked the man on the back of the head while he was not paying attention. The wooden stick broke the moment it touched the man's head. Lucci swallowed, and fortunately the man's hand on the boy loosened, and the boy successfully broke free. Lucci quickly ran to the boy and pulled him away quickly, and they ran to the forest together and soon succeeded in getting rid of the man. Lucci and the boy were holding on to a tall tree and trying to calm their breathing. Lucci and the boy looked at each other for a while, and then Lucci spoke first. My name is Lucci, what's your name, and why are you being chased by him? The boy was silent for a while and said, my name is Ace, and I stole his treasure from him. But who are you? I haven't seen you here before. I, fell from the sky and found myself in the forest, and couldn't find the way back. Lucci said as he calmed his breathing which was disordered by running just now. It seems that he needs to strengthen his exercise, Lucci thought. From the sky? How is that possible? Ace said in shock. Ace, you're back. How was your harvest today? A blond boy ran over from behind the tree. He was wearing a blue top hat and a neatly tattered blue shirt that looked like a tuxedo. He looked the same age as Lucci, but didn't look like someone who could survive here. Lucci observed the new blonde boy. Sabo, I just made a deal, Ace said, holding up the bag in his hand. Sure, Ace, we're one step closer to saving enough pirate funds to go out to sea, Sabo said happily. Do you want to go out to sea as pirates? Lucci asked excitedly beside him. Ace, who is he? Sabo asked confusedly. In fact, Sabo had seen him just now, but when he saw the treasure in Ace's hand, he forgot to ask Ace. Hello, my name is Lucci. Do you want to go to sea together? I also want to go to sea in the future and see the world, Lucci said excitedly. Really? Me too. I'm going to travel to all the islands and write a book about all the adventures I've had. Sabo said excitedly. By the way, my name is Sabo, where are you from? My grandfather tied me to a balloon and floated me here, and now I can't find the way back, said Lucci dejectedly. Ace and Sabo looked at each other, a drop of sweat on their faces. Can I stay with you for a few days? I can also help you collect treasures, Lucci said excitedly. Sabo and Ace looked at each other and smiled, sure, but we won't protect you. I don't need your protection. I'm very strong, and definitely stronger than you, Lucci said angrily. Ace and Sabo shouted at the same time, impossible, I am the strongest. Then let's have a competition, Lucci said excitedly. Okay, Ace Sabo said at the same time. We play one-on-one, each of us plays 50 games, and see who wins more, said Sabo. Chapter 3. It has been a few weeks since he met Ace and Sabo. During this time, Lucci would go to the waste terminal with Ace and Sabo every day to find useful items and rob other gangsters of their treasures. At the beginning of each of their duels, Lucci could not keep up with the attacks of Ace and Sabo. After several weeks of forest training, with Lucci's attacking skills and strength, he can now fight them back and forth, and the three of them are now basically tied most of the time. During these 2 weeks, Lucci was slowly looking for the way back, but every time he passed through the forest, he would be ambushed by many large animals, making it impossible to get through, so he could only explore bit by bit. After 3 months of exploration, Lucci found a road in the forest leading to the village. I haven't seen Luffy for a long time. I wonder how he's doing recently, Luffy thought excitedly. But I have to talk to Ace Sabo first, and find some gifts for Luffy. Otherwise, it will be hard to appease that guy if he gets angry after not seeing him for so long, Lucci thought helplessly. Sabo, Lucci shouted under a big tree. After a while, a boy with blonde hair appeared. What's wrong, Lucci? Sabo asked, yawning. I found the way back, Lucci said excitedly. Oh. Really? That's fine. Have you searched the forest in every direction? Sabo asked with a smile. Yes, I plan to go back tomorrow, but I need to say hello to you. I may not come over for the next few weeks, but I will come to see you every day in the future. After all, we still have 50 training sessions every day, Lucci said with a smile. Oh, then let's go to Gao Town today after Ace comes back. We just happen to have some crocodile skins to sell as well, Sabo said with a smile. Oh, okay, then let's go hunting first and prepare our lunch, Luffy said with a smile. I must be bigger than you, Sabo said with a smile. That's impossible, it must be mine that hit the hardest, Lucci shouted. In the afternoon, Lucci, Ace, and Sabo successfully sneaked into Jajin City. The three of them hid in the alleys to avoid the guards and prepared to find buyers to sell their crocodile skins. Ace, Sabo, I have something to do. You go sell the crocodile skins first, and I will come to find you later, Lucci whispered to them. Ace looked at Lucci suspiciously. Then you have to hurry up, we need to get out before the city gate closes, Sabo said to Lucci. Okay, I'll be there soon, Lucci said, then turned and ran into the crowd. Sabo, is there something wrong with Lucci? It feels like he is hiding something from us, Ace said with a serious face. Well, a little bit, but there's nothing we can do about it. He doesn't want to say it, Sabo said, scratching the back of his head. But today Lucci said he found the way back and plans to go back tomorrow. He said he won't be with us for the next few weeks, but he will come back later, Sabo said to Ace. Whatever he wants. Ace said disdainfully. Let's go sell the crocodile skin first. Sabo looked at Ace's arrogant expression with helplessness. What gift should I bring back to Luffy? Lucci pondered, wondering how Luffy was doing now, and whether he had listened to Makuro's words. A doting smile appeared on Lucci's face. Lucci looked around and walked to a candy store without realizing it. Looking at the various candies inside, Luffy would probably like them. But the prices were too high, and Lucci looked frustrated. Hee. Looks like that's the only way I can do it, Luffy thought with an evil look on his face. Stop, the boy in front of you, stop right there. Ace, did you hear anything? Sabo asked doubtfully. It seems like someone is being chased. Ace looked at the commotion not far away. Never mind, let's go back first. The city gates are about to close, but a lot of crocodile skins are sold today. Ace shook the bag in his hand. Sabo nodded, but they seem to be running towards us. Ace. Sabo, let's run. What, Lucci, what are you doing? Why did you attract so many people? Ace shouted angrily. Stop talking, let's go, Sabo said anxiously. Phew. Fortunately we arrived. Sabo wiped the sweat from his head. Oh. Lucci, what are you doing? Why did you attract so many people? Ace said angrily as he punched Lucci on the head. Ouch. It hurts, Ace. Lucci held his head and yelled at Ace. Okay, Lucci, what did you just do? Sabo pulled Ace aside and asked Lucci curiously. I stole some candy from him, Lucci said with a smile, showing the candy in the bag. Just for this, are you still a child? You like eating candy? Ace yelled at Lucci angrily. Lucci dodged Ace's shouting, hey, kids like to eat this, you try it, and I'm not just taking it for myself, Lucci said as he stuffed some candy into Ace's mouth and also stuffed some into Sabo's mouth. You're not taking it for yourself? Then who are you giving it to? Sabo asked curiously while eating. It's my brother, Lucci said sheepishly. Brother? You actually have a younger brother? Sabo and Ace shouted in shock. Hey. Why are you acting like it's weird that I have a younger brother? Lucci yelled in dissatisfaction. But I didn't expect you to be the older brother, so are you going to bring him to your younger brother? Sabo scratched his head. Ace was thinking beside him, not knowing what he was thinking. Yes, I'm going back tomorrow. Lucci asked excitedly, by the way, do you want to go back with me? It's on the other side of the island, and my brother is very cute. No. I have something to do tomorrow, Ace said in a deep voice. Then he walked away alone. Ace. Sabo chased after him. Lucci followed with a puzzled look on his face. Sabo, what happened to Ace? Lucci asked as he walked. It's okay, he may not want to leave the forest, let's prepare dinner first, Sabo said helplessly. Although Lucci was confused, he nodded. Ace, Sabo, I'm going back, Lucci said while waving. Okay, remember to come find us, Sabo said, while Ace watched Lucci walk away in silence. Great, I finally got out. Luffy walked to Makina's tavern, opened the door and shouted, Luffy, I'm back. Before Lucci could enter, he was hit by a small cannonball. Nissan, where have you been? Luffy said while crying. Luffy smiled and touched the head of the person in his arms. Luffy, don't cry. Luffy is a man, and men don't cry, right? Little Luffy pouted cutely and looked at Lucci with tearful eyes. Brother is on an adventure, Lucci said happily. Really? I want to hear my brother's adventure stories, Luffy said excitedly. Lucci. Makina asked in surprise, what took you so long to come back? My grandfather tied me to a balloon and we floated all the way to the forest. I got lost in the forest and only found my way back recently. Lucci scratched his hair embarrassedly. But I met two friends, Lucci said excitedly. I want them too. I want to be friends with them too. Luffy jumped up and down excitedly. Okay, as long as Luffy behaves and doesn't cry, I will take you to see them, Luffy said gently. I'm not crying, I'm a man, Luffy shouted angrily. Yes, our Luffy is a man. Lucci touched his head. Lucci, you haven't eaten yet. Come over and eat something first, said Makina. Okay. Thank you Sister Magino. Lucci shouted quickly. I want a big portion of meat, Luffy said excitedly. Yes. Makina smiled and touched Luffy's head. After eating, Lucci and Luffy sat on the beach and played until the sky was gradually covered by the orange-red sunset. Sister Makina, Luffy and I will go back first, Luffy said to Makina as he looked at the gradually darkening sky. Goodbye, Sister Makina, Luffy said in a childish voice. Ah! Luffy is so cute. Lucci showed a doting smile on his face. When Luffy grows up a little bit, I will bring Luffy to Ace and Sabo to meet him, Lucci thought. Chapter 4. 2 years have passed since Lucci met Ace and Sabo. During this period, Lucci would go to the Uncertainty Terminal and Ace and Sabo from time to time to train and reserve pirate funds. Luffy is 5 years old now. He can go to the forest with me. I can also introduce my cute brother to Ace and Sabo, Lucci thought happily. Luffy, now I will take you to meet my friends. They are also your brothers. Don't run around on the way to the forest. The forest is very dangerous. Lucci said to Luffy behind him. I will teach you how to hunt. There is a lot of meat here for you to eat. I can hunt anything you want to eat. Lucci said dotingly. He imagined his brother's admiring expression and had a nosebleed in his heart. No. Why didn't Luffy answer? Lucci came back to his senses and turned to look behind him. Luffy, oh no, why is Luffy gone? Lucci was shocked to see no one behind him. Where are you, Luffy? Brother is here. Lucci shouted anxiously, damn it. While Lucci was talking, Luffy saw a golden beetle and hurried to catch it, following the beetle further and further away. When he came to his senses, Lucci was gone. Oh my god, how come brother got lost again? Luffy said cutely. He looked around and found a beautiful butterfly. He followed the butterfly and ran to an open space. The butterfly flew into the sky and flew away. Luffy finally gave up and looked around. There were tall trees and bushes everywhere. Luffy saw that the bushes on the right seemed to be moving. Suddenly a wild boar rushed out of the bushes and rushed towards him. Luffy was so scared that he turned around and ran. When Luffy ran to a tree, he fell down. Just when Luffy was about to be knocked down, a boy jumped out of the tree. The boy hit the wild boar's eyes with a water pipe. The wild boar screamed after being injured, and ran away quickly because he saw the new boy was not easy to mess with. The boy stood there and stared at the direction where the wild boar ran away. After realizing that the wild boar would not come back, he turned around and looked at the boy who was younger than him, and turned away. Luffy watched the boy who just saved him walk away and hurriedly followed him. As he walked, he said to him, "Hey! You're so cool. Let's be friends. My name is Luffy, what's your name?" The black-haired boy ignored him and walked forward quickly, trying to get rid of him. "Don't follow me. I don't like weaklings like you," the black-haired boy yelled at the boy who was younger than him. "Hey! I'm not weak, my fists are as powerful as guns," Luffy said angrily. The black-haired boy ignored him and ran towards the forest in front, trying to get rid of the follower behind him. Ace looked at the man following behind him and knocked him off the rocks many times, kicking down trees to stop him and block his path. "I finally got rid of him. If the road behind wasn't easier to walk on, I wouldn't have taken so long to get rid of him." Ace walked to the terminal of the uncertain object and planned to ambush the person holding the treasure. A group of thugs passed by with a bag of treasure. The boy stopped them and after a fight, he successfully took the treasure from them. "It seems like a lot." The boy shook the bag in his hand and walked towards the forest. Entering the forest, they arrived under a big tree. Ace shouted Sabo towards the tree. A blond boy poked his head out from the tree branch. "Ace, how was the harvest?" "Ah! I just made a big profit." Ace raised the bag in his hand. "Wow! So much! A good harvest. I just did some work, but not as much as you," Sabo said happily as he looked at the treasure in Ace's hand. Ace quickly climbed up the tree and gave the treasure to Sabo and put it in the tree hole where treasure was stored. "Sabo, put it away quickly, it will be troublesome if someone finds it." "How much does it cost to buy a pirate ship?" "Who knows? Maybe tens of millions or hundreds of millions, there's still a long way to go." "Pirate ship? Do you want to be pirates too?" "Me too." Luffy waved his hands excitedly under the big tree. The two looked at Luffy in horror, then looked at each other, quickly ran down from the tree, and punched Luffy in the head. "Be quiet." Then he tied Luffy to a tree. "You still followed me here. I clearly got rid of it," Ace said angrily. "Ace, who is he? Did he follow you here?" Sabo stared at Luffy with anger. "My name is Luffy. Ace saved me and I followed him here. Are you Ace's friend? Be my friend too," Luffy said with a smile on his face. "Shut up, why are you calling me that? What's your name then?" "I won't tell you." Sabo looked at Ace and said, "What should we do? Now that the secret has been discovered, if we ignore it, this guy will tell others." "Kill him," Ace said with a gloomy face. "Okay, let's do it," Sabo said with a gloomy face. "Ah! Help! Don't kill me! I don't want to die yet! Help!" Luffy cried. "Idiot! Be quiet!" Sabo anxiously covered Luffy's mouth. "Sabo, hurry up!" Ace shouted anxiously from the side. "What did you say? You do it!" Sabo shouted in horror. "I haven't killed anyone," Ace roared in horror. "I've never killed anyone before, so I don't know what to do," Sabo roared angrily. Ah! Don't kill me! Luffy cried loudly. Shut up! Luffy paused, then continued to cry. I don't want to die. There is a voice in the forest, the voice of a child. Let's go in and take a look. Oh no! Someone is coming. Anyway, untie this guy's rope first. If we don't leave here, the treasure will be discovered. Ace looked at Sabo. Look around here, you must find that little devil who dared to steal my treasure. Who are you, kid? A gangster said, holding a child in his hand. How did that kid run away and get caught? Ace Sabo watched in horror as Luffy was picked up by Borhami in the bushes. Luffy didn't know what was going on yet, and looked bewildered. Let me go. Ace, save me. Damn it. Don't call me by my name. Ace looked at Luffy in shock as he called his name. Oh no, he will definitely tell it, and our treasure will be discovered, Sabo said anxiously. Ace? Do you know that kid? Where did they put the treasure? Borhami said to Luffy. I don't know. Luffy's mouth corners turned down, his eyes looked to the side, and sweat appeared on his forehead. What a terrible lying skill you have. Borhami and Ace Sabo, who was hiding in the bushes, looked shocked. Take this kid back. Sabo. We have to transfer our treasure as soon as possible. It's only a matter of time before Luffy speaks. Then they will not only take what we stole from him, but also all our savings of the past 5 years, Ace said solemnly to Sabo. Sabo looked cautious. Borhami carried Luffy to an abandoned hut at his base, tied Luffy up and left him hanging. Listen, kid, the money your friend Ace stole from us is very important to our gang. He put on his gloves and grabbed the boy's head. You know where he is, then tell me. Chapter 5. No, Luffy spat without fear. Then don't blame me, kid, said Borhami, hitting the boy with his fist. Ow! It hurts. Help me! Luffy screamed in pain. Borhami struck the boy again and again. Boss, forget it, he probably doesn't know anything, said the subordinate next to Borhami reluctantly. Shut up! We are the ones who need to worry now. If we don't get the money back in time, Captain Bluejam will kill us. Find Ace and Sabo, we have no time to waste. He ordered his men. They accepted it, thankful that they had escaped watching the boys torture. They began searching for the 2 children near the garbage dump. Ace and Sabo. A homeless man said with a smile. Better give up, you can't be with those guys. Don't underestimate them, they are just kids. They can even kill a tiger. Sabo hid behind them and watched them as they searched for them. When he realized why they were looking for them, his eyes widened and he ran off. Ha! Finally all the treasures have been moved here. Ace wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked at the treasure in front of him. He felt relieved and showed a relaxed expression. Looking at the darkening sky, why hasn't Sabo come back yet? Nothing has happened, right? Ace thought worriedly. Who? Ace. When Ace heard Sabo's very panicked voice, he turned around and looked worriedly at Sabo who was running towards him. Sabo, what happened? Did they go to our previous treasure address to get the money? They didn't, Sabo gasped. They couldn't. What are you talking about? Ace looked at Sabo in surprise. That guy named Luffy, he didn't tell them anything. Ace turned pale at Sabo's words. They must still be torturing him. I thought he was a crybaby and would tell soon. I don't understand why he doesn't tell. If this goes on, he... Ace opened his eyes wide, clenched his fists, and his face became paler than usual. He hurriedly ran towards the waste terminal. Sabo, we have to find the base of Borhami as soon as possible. There were blows coming from a dilapidated hut near the uncertainty terminal. Tell me now. Borhami angrily hit the boy. The boy didn't even moan or cry anymore. His men couldn't bear to see such cruel behavior again. Mr. Borhami, stammered one of the men. This isn't working, he doesn't even have the energy to scream. I don't think he can talk anymore. The truth is, I can't stand seeing this anymore. Please have mercy. Borhami mercilessly punched the person who spoke, and he gritted his teeth and said. If you have time to talk, go find Ace and Sabo. Our lives are in danger, don't you understand? It took us too long to pay Captain Bluejam. That's it, since you don't want to tell me, then go to hell. Borhami raised his knife and said angrily to Luffy. Stop! Accompanied by the sound of breaking glass. Ace and Sabo broke the window and rushed in. Ace Luffy raised his head and opened his eyes slightly to glance at Ace, murmuring. Ace got into a fighting stance and said, Sabo, I'll hold on to Borhami, you go save the people. Yeah, Sabo answered cautiously with his back against Ace. Ace knocked away the surrounding Borhami's men and rushed directly towards Borhami, fighting the man with the pipe. Sabo knocked away the people around him, rushed towards Luffy, and quickly rescued Luffy and held him. Ace, run! Sabo hugged Luffy and prepared to run back. You go first, Ace ordered. Idiot! Get out of here! Sabo shouted anxiously. Once we fight, I will never run away. Ace looked at the enemy in front of him with anger and determination. What? You little brat! Borhami looked at Ace gloomily. Stop! He's not on the same level as the thugs in this town, Sabo shouted at Ace's back. Don't you know this very well? Borhami's face was full of anger. Hey! The game is over. That's our money, hand it over, you little rascal. Borhami said as he pointed a knife at Ace. You are just possessed by the devil for a moment. Just return the money to me and I promise not to make things difficult for you. Ace used the tube to open the knife and looked at Borhami firmly. We can better play its value. You, what did you say? Borhami looked at Ace angrily. Wait a moment, Sabo said to Luffy, looking at Ace's back. After putting Luffy in a safe place, he ran to Ace and confronted Burjimi with him. You're messing around again. Why are you always like this? Sabo said to Ace while staring at the enemy in front of him. I won't run away. Ace stared at the enemy in front of him. Stop talking nonsense, Borhami shouted angrily. Luffy watched their fight and was shocked as Burjimi raised his knife and chopped off Ace's pipe head, leaving a bloody mark on Ace. Burjimi angrily yelled at Ace, if I lose to a kid, I won't be a pirate anymore. We'll make you give up. Ace Sabo jumped up and hit Borhami with the pipe. I'm going to kill you all, Borhami shouted, raising his knife. Luffy watched in amazement as they fought, but Ace and Sabo were able to defeat Borhami and they managed to escape to the forest. After the three of them bandaged the wound in the forest, Luffy cried with tears in his eyes. Why are you so desperate? Sabo said helplessly to Ace who was winding the pipe. It doesn't quite fit, the previous one is better, Ace said to himself while looking at the tube. Alas! If we do something like this, Blue Jam's gang will not let us go. We will be hunted down in the future, Sabo murmured worriedly, leaning against a tree with his head lowered. I was so scared. I thought I was going to die. Luffy cried with tears in his eyes. Ignoring Sabo's voice, Ace jumped off the rock and walked in front of Luffy. Ace yelled at Luffy, ah! So annoying. It's so noisy. How long are you going to cry? I hate cowards and crybabies the most. After Ace finished yelling, Luffy immediately shut his mouth and looked at Ace with his eyes wide open and full of tears. Ace and Sabo looked at Luffy in surprise and he instantly quieted down. Thank you for saving me. Little Luffy lowered his head to thank them, and then couldn't help crying loudly. Hey! You! Ace was instantly angry and ready to rush over. Hey! Hey! He's just apologizing, Sabo said helplessly, stopping Ace. Speaking of which, why don't you confess? Those guys killed women and children without batting an eyelid. Ace shouted angrily at little Luffy. If I tell you, then I won't be able to be friends with you guys anymore. Little Luffy whispered. Chapter 6. It's better to die than to not be friends with me. Why do you want to be friends with me so much? Ace said excitedly while looking at Luffy. Because. Little Luffy lowered his head, his hair covering his eyes as he murmured. I have made you suffer so much so far, but you finally came here with me. Because I have no one else to rely on. I don't know anyone here, and I can't find the way back. If I don't chase you, I will be alone. Being alone is more painful than pain. Little Luffy said loudly. Where is your family? I only have one brother. Little Luffy looked at Ace with tears in his eyes. Won't you be sad if I'm here? Ace lowered his head and said softly. Yeah, Luffy looked at Ace firmly with a crying voice. Would it bother you if I wasn't here? Yeah, little Luffy answered affirmatively. What if Roger has a kid? Ha ha ha. It would be troublesome if there was a guy like that. A man in the bar said loudly. That guy is a devil who is not even allowed to be born or survive. A man wearing a hat nearby said to the smaller Ace in a mocking tone. Ace silently thought about what the people in the bar said. Do you want me to live? Ace asked in a low voice. Of course, Luffy said loudly. Really? Ace said softly. But I hate guys like you who like to act like a spoiled child. Ace turned around to hide his expression, scratching his hair in a cover-up. I'm not acting like a spoiled child. I'm very strong. Little Luffy argued loudly for himself as he jumped off the stone. Strong? How are you strong? You're a man, but you just know how to cry. Ace turned and shouted at Luffy. Have you ever been hit by a fist? I'm only 5 years old. If I were the same age as you, I would never cry. And I would become stronger, little Luffy shouted angrily. I never cried even when I was 5 years old. Idiot. Don't compare me to you, Ace yelled at Luffy angrily. I will become stronger than anyone else. I will become a great pirate, Luffy roared. Pirate? Just you. That's right. Is it possible? Of course. Ace and Luffy were not convinced by each other and were bumping their foreheads back and forth. Okay, that's enough. Sabo frowned and separated the two people who were arguing. Now I have a question. Problem. Little Luffy looked at Sabo innocently. Since this incident, the three of us have been completely targeted by Blue Jam and his men, Sabo said to Ace seriously. That's right, Ace looked at Sabo. The forest where I live is very close to their base, the Pirate Bay. What would happen if they attack me while I am exhausted and fall asleep? Sabo said as he thought and walked forward. Ace and Luffy looked at Sabo quietly, and Ace said calmly, he will die. Yes, he will definitely die, Luffy nodded calmly and replied. Well, so I'm going to discuss something with you. Put your ears close to me, Sabo said, looking at them with a smile. Ace. Sabo. Hey. Ace Sabo heard someone calling their names, turned around and saw Lucci running towards him anxiously. Are you okay? I just heard Blue Gem looking for you at Waste Terminal. What did you do? Lucci said to Ace and Sabo. Elder brother. A figure rushed towards Lucci. Lucci quickly caught it, but was still knocked to the ground by the impact. Brother. Ace and Sabo stood aside and looked at them in shock. Ah, it hurts. Lucci rubbed his head and looked at the kid sitting on him. Ah. Luffy, don't bump into me suddenly next time. Lucci said to Luffy with a headache. He Luffy looked at Lucci innocently. Ah. Luffy, why are you here? Why are you so injured? Lucci reacted and grabbed Luffy to check him up and down. I'm fine now, Luffy said as he broke free from Lucci's hand. Hey, brother, I made 2 new friends, they are Ace and Sabo, Luffy excitedly said to Lucci while pulling Ace and Sabo. We are not your friends, Ace shouted at Luffy with his shark mouth. Little Luffy smiled widely at Ace, and Sabo leaned beside him and looked at them with a smile. Lucci had to break this situation and wanted to know what had happened, why Luffy was so injured, and why Blossom was asking around about Ace and Sabo. Ace, what happened to Sabo? I saw Blue Jimmy's men looking for you everywhere, Lucci asked, looking at them in confusion. And Luffy, don't walk away alone next time, especially in the forest, you can easily be eaten, Lucci shouted at Luffy. Brother, you are so fierce. And it was me who got lost. Luffy pouted and hid behind Sabo. You. Lucci was about to go over and teach Luffy a lesson. Sabo stopped Luffy and said, well, forget it. Ace silently moved to the other side of Luffy. It's like this. Sabo and Ace told Lucci everything that happened today. So what are you going to do now? Blue Jimmy's men are now everywhere at the waste terminal asking for your information. Lucci looked at them worriedly. The forest I live in is closest to them. We discussed sleeping in the place where Ace and his guardian, the bandit, live, Sabo said with a smile. But you can't go to the waste terminal or the town recently, Lucci nodded and added. What about our pirate fund? Ace said angrily. And we can avoid them. Ace, no, for safety reasons, you can't go for now. Blue Jam will definitely be waiting for you there, Lucci said. Lucci is right. We should temporarily stop stockpiling pirate funds, but we can go hunting first and save the furs and sell them later. Okay, Ace said, crossing his arms and holding the pipe. The next morning, a scream was heard from the bandits' residence. Boss! Boss! It's bad! What's the noise so early in the morning? A sturdy orange-haired woman shouted angrily. Wow! What's going on? The bandits looked at the extra children in amazement. What's wrong with these injuries? They're all bandages. Especially the younger child, he doesn't look more than 5 years old. The small bandit looked at the 4 children sleeping soundly on the ground in shock. Ah! Ace! Who are these extra little ghosts? The orange-haired woman shouted. Alucci sat up sleepily and looked at the person in front of him, then fell back down and continued to sleep. It's so noisy so early in the morning, Ace said sleepily as he sat up, then fell back down to continue sleeping. Why are there 3 more children? Who are you? Chapter 7. Why are there 3 more children? Who are you? Me. Sabo woke up rubbing his eyes. Oh. I'm Sabo, hello, you must be Dodin, Sabo said with a smile. Sabo? I've heard of you. Dodin looked at Sabo. Really? That's easy. I'll be under your care from today on, Sabo said with a smile, holding Dodin's hands with both hands. Being taken care of by me? You don't want to rely on me, do you? Dodin shook off Sabo's hand and looked at him. Sabo smiled and looked at Dodin. Don't answer with farts, Dodin yelled angrily. Hee Sabo scratched his head and laughed awkwardly. What a joke, I heard that Sabo is also a famous brat. Dodin looked at Sabo angrily. Really? I also heard that Dodin is a stinky old woman. Pfft. The bandits behind Dodin looked at Sabo in shock. Don't listen to this kind of unnecessary information. I don't want to take care of you brats anymore, Dodin pointed at Sabo and shouted. But you are a kind-hearted old woman who won't refuse someone's request. I heard that you are a man among men. Sabo smiled at Dodin with narrowed eyes. A man among men? I am a woman. Are you saying that I am androgynous? Dodin said angrily. Dodin stared at Sabo angrily for a few seconds. Oh, Dodin turned around and sighed. He turned to look at Luffy and Lucci and said, who are you guys? Hello. Hello, Dodin, I'm Lucci, and this is Luffy. Lucci squinted his eyes and looked at Dodin with a smile. Dodin stared at them both and said, you don't want me to take care of you too, do you? No, we don't need it, we just need to stay for a while, Lucci said with a smile. Oh, forget it. Ace, Sabo, Lucci, Luffy, I will provide you with a place to live, just work hard for me, Dodin said loudly. Thank you, Dodin, Lucci and Sabo said to Dodin with a smile. Luffy stood looking at them with a smile, while Ace stood aside with his arms crossed and watched expressionlessly. Let's go out, Ace, Sabo, Luffy and Lucci quickly ran out the door and ran towards the forest. Luffy, you have to do the laundry and cleaning at home, Dodin shouted from behind. We don't want to. Luffy turned around and smiled and made a face in Dodin's direction. Ha ha ha, Luffy, let's go quickly, or we'll lose track of Ace and Sabo. Lucci said to Luffy. Ah! Ace, Sabo, wait for me. Lucci looked at Luffy's back with a doting smile. Ah, what a bunch of hateful brats, said Dodin, looking at the backs of Luffy and the others. Ah! That's right, Lucci suddenly stopped and said. He turned around and shouted to Dodin and the others, Dodin, Bluejum and his gang might come when we're away, so be careful. Bluejum and his gang are back? Why? The short pirate asked puzzledly. We beat up that guy's men. Goodbye, Sabo shouted loudly in the distance. Hey! Dodin and his gang shouted in shock. Dodin is a very reasonable old woman, Sabo said with a smile as he ran. Yeah, I thought it would take a long time, Lucci said with a smile as he ran behind. But the old woman won't change that. Ace answered Sabo while running beside him with a blank expression. Yeah, he looks scary too, Luffy said to Ace with an excited smile as he caught up with him. What should we do next? Lucci said from the side. First of all, Ace said without emotion. Eat. Luffy rushed up excitedly. Ace looked back at Luffy who turned away in disgust, while Sabo and Lucci looked at Luffy's excitement with amusement. Okay, let's go eat first, Sabo said with a smile. Luffy took big bites of the bone and meat in his hand. The 4 boys gathered around a big grilled fish and wolfed down the meat in their hands. Lucci, is Luffy the younger brother you mentioned before? Sabo asked curiously while biting the flesh on his hand. Yeah, this guy was only 3 years old at that time, and he cried to me every day. Lucci winked and told Sabo about Luffy's interesting stories. I didn't, Luffy retorted loudly to Lucci. No. Lucci teased Luffy in a suspicious tone. It's obvious that this guy is still a weak crybaby, Ace said to Luffy mockingly. No, I've become very strong now. My fists are like pistols, Luffy shouted angrily at Ace. Really, really? Ace said as he lay on the ground to rest with a smile on his face. He turned his back to Luffy and lay on his side with his hands supporting his head, mocking him in a mocking tone. Stop bragging, you who can't even catch a fish. What? Luffy shouted angrily. Lucci and Sabo laughed and watched the argument between Ace and Luffy. I'll prove it to you. Luffy said as he rushed towards the river. Luffy, what do you want to prove? Lucci looked at Luffy's angry expression with amusement, but he didn't expect that the idiot jumped directly into the water and was swallowed by the crocodile. Lucci was so scared that his heart almost jumped out. Ace and Sabo watched as the crocodile swallowed Luffy, and they were so shocked that they shouted, "Who told you to eat a free meal?" As he said this, he threw the pipe into the crocodile's mouth, making it unable to close its mouth, and then rushed forward. Lucci shouted, "Spit out Luffy," as he rushed forward and hit the crocodile on the head with a pipe. Soon Luffy was successfully rescued from the crocodile's stomach, and the crocodile was taken back to Dodon as their dinner. Lucci was holding up the crocodile's head with Ace in the front, and angrily said to Luffy, who was holding up the crocodile's tail with Sabo in the back, "Don't jump directly into the water next time, or I'll give you less meat next time." "No, you are not allowed to take my meat," Luffy said angrily. Lucci shook his head helplessly. "Then you are not allowed to jump directly into the water." "This guy is too weak, he can't even swim," Ace said with a smile in front. "I'm not weak, I just haven't learned how to swim yet." Luffy bared his teeth angrily at Ace from behind. Okay, crocodile will let you eat as much as you want for dinner, okay?" Lucci said to Luffy with a soothing smile. "Okay, I'm not angry anymore," Luffy said happily. "Hey! So easy to coax." Sabo looked back at Luffy curiously. "Lucci, don't spoil him too much," Ace said from the side. "I really want to eat crocodile rice quickly." "I can't wait until dinner," Luffy said with sleepy eyes and drooling. "Ace, Lucci, there is something I want to confirm." "Ace, please come with me," Sabo said to the two people in front. Ace looked back at Sabo in confusion. "Do you want to go and see where the treasure is hidden in the forest?" Lucci said. Sabo nodded and said, "Lucci, you and Luffy go back first." "Yet?" Lucci nodded, looking at Luffy's tired eyes. "No, I want to go too," Luffy said suddenly soberly. "Luffy!" Lucci shouted. "Okay, let's go," Ace said. Chapter 8. Ace, Sabo and Lucci hid in the grass with branches stuck on their heads for cover, and Luffy hid in the grass with grass and flowers stuck on his head, watching from behind the Blue Jam people searching the tree where the treasure was hidden before. "Fortunately, I transferred the pirate deposits in advance," Sabo said thankfully. "Do you want to go to the waste terminal?" Lucci said beside him. Luffy and Ace watched Sabo from the side. "Yeah, Ace and I will go together." "Lucci, you take Luffy back to Dodon first," Sabo said to Lucci, while Ace watched Luffy from the side to prevent him from making any noise. "Okay, be careful and don't get discovered," Lucci nodded. "No," Luffy said excitedly. Sabo and Lucci looked at Luffy in horror. Ace hurriedly pushed Luffy to the ground and covered his mouth, trying to stop him from shouting. "It seems there is no way," Lucci covered his face. "It's no use saying it," Sabo said helplessly. Sabo, Ace, Luffy and Lucci hid behind a rock and watched Blue Jam and the others searching at waste terminal. "The thugs who guard the mountain and their gang are wandering around. They are serious this time." Sabo rode on Ace's head and looked at Blue Jam and the others. "That guy Bluesum must be very unwilling," Ace said with a frown as he held Sabo and rode on Lucci's head. "They seem serious. It seems we need to hide from them for a while," Lucci said worriedly. "Lucci, I can't see." Luffy jumped behind Lucci trying to see what was ahead. "Hey! Guys, the person you're looking for is here." A middle-aged man suddenly appeared from behind and pointed at them and shouted, scaring the three of them so much that they staggered and fell down. "Stop, don't try to run." They hurriedly took Luffy and fled quickly towards the forest, hid in the forest, and used the complex terrain of the forest to successfully get rid of them. Even the uncles at the terminal have been bribed. We'd better stay here quietly until the storm passes, Sabo said dejectedly as he slumped under a tree. It doesn't matter, just fight if you meet him, Ace said indifferently. Having said that, it wouldn't be good for us to take the initiative to provoke, Sabo said to Ace. I agree with what Sabo said. After all, they are real pirates, different from the thugs we usually fight, Lucci said to Ace while holding the sleeping Luffy against the tree. But Blue Jamie should already know Luffy, so it's not safe for me to take him up and down the mountain every day. Sabo Ace, I'll have to leave Luffy to you for the time being, Lucci said with a frown, thinking. Sabo and Ace looked at each other and stood up in shock. What? I don't want to take care of a baby, Ace yelled angrily. Why, Lucci, don't you live with us? Sabo asked confused. Not yet. I have to go back to the village every day to help out at Makina's tavern. I need to help her there for a while to earn living expenses for Luffy and me. Besides, Dodden's place doesn't have that much space for 4 boys to move around, Lucci said with a smile, scratching the back of his head. But we won't take care of that baby, Ace said, turning his head. Ha ha ha, Ace, you like Luffy very much. Lucci looked at Ace proudly. No. Ace blushed and turned his head away. Lucci and Sabo smiled at each other. At night, Ace and Sabo continued to lift the crocodile with a smile, while Lucci smiled and held Luffy beside him as they walked towards Dodden's house. Ace, Sabo, Luffy and Lucci spent the next year together. Luffy stayed at Dodden's house with Ace and Sabo, hunting together in the jungle. Lucci went back and forth between Windmill Village and the forest every day to hunt with them. Sometimes, when Luffy fell asleep, he and Ace and Sabo avoided Blue Jam and fought with the gangsters at the entrance of the waste terminal. Ace, Sabo, I want to go to the waste terminal with you. Luffy looked at Ace and Sabo with his big watery eyes. Ace and Sabo turned their heads to avoid Luffy's eyes, afraid that they would not be able to resist the eye attack, and agreed to him. No, you're too young now, Ace said to Luffy with a frown. No, I'm 7 years old now and I'm already a big boy, Luffy said angrily. Well, Luffy is 6 years old, not 7 yet, Sabo said with a smile. We'll take you there when you're 7 years old. Don't object, Ace said to Luffy while standing aside with his arms crossed. Ace is very fierce, but Sabo is the best, Luffy muttered with a pout. What did you say? Ace punched Luffy on the head. Wow! Sabo will never hit me like this, Luffy shouted while squatting on the ground with his head covered with tears. Well! Don't be angry, we are going to have crocodile rice today, and Lucci should be here soon. Sabo stopped Ace with a smile. Great! Crocodile, crocodile, delicious crocodile rice! Luffy shouted excitedly. Ace looked at the excited Luffy and shook his head helplessly. Ace, Luffy and Sabo stood together on the tree where the crocodiles gathered, waiting for the crocodiles to come out of the water. Luffy, don't let the crocodiles eat you again this time, Sabo said to Luffy, squatting on the tree. Last time, I was saved because I was swallowed whole. Oh! Luffy replied, grabbing the pipe and wiping his saliva. Luffy, just watch. A landlubber will only hold us back, Ace said to Luffy with a smile while staring at the crocodile in the water. Okay, it's out, let's go Sabo, Ace said excitedly. Wait a minute, Luffy. I told you to watch. Ace was startled when he saw Luffy suddenly jump down, and quickly jumped down after him. Luffy, didn't I tell you that you had to wait up there? Ace shouted angrily at Luffy after pulling the crocodile up. All right, Sabo went over and pulled Ace away. Forget it, this time the crocodile is considered to be caught by you, Ace said with his back to them. Really? Luffy said excitedly, I like Ace the most. Luffy hugged Ace excitedly. What? Ace's face instantly turned red and smoke came out of his head. Sabo watched the interaction between Luffy and Ace with a smile on his face. Hey! What's wrong with Ace? Lucci walked behind Sabo and asked curiously. Ah, Lucci, you're here. Let's have crocodile rice today, Sabo said to Lucci. Nothing, let's grill the crocodile quickly, Ace shouted. Yes, let's grill the crocodile quickly. Besides, this crocodile was caught by me, Luffy jumped around excitedly. Wow! Luffy is so awesome! Lucci smiled and ruffled Luffy's hair. The 4 boys bit the flesh on their hands. Lucci looked at Ace and Sabo, now that Blue Jam should not be looking for us, we should be able to go to the town of Waste Terminal now. Chapter 9. We can go to the town today and sell the crocodile skins and other things we hunted. It should be able to fetch a lot of money. Sabo lay on the ground to rest. Then we need 3 people to go together, but what about Luffy? He is too small, Ace said, turning his head and looking at Luffy who was studying the beetle not far away. Now we can let Luffy go back to Windmill Village. Luffy hasn't been back for a long time and Makina misses him too. Luffy said hesitantly. Will he come? Sabo asked. I promised him that I would take him to Waste Terminal when he turns 7, Ace said with a frown. Well, we can also go to the Windmill Village to see him. The main reason is that Grandpa said that Luffy will come here before he turns 7. Now there are only a few months left. It will be troublesome if the old man finds out that Luffy is not in the Windmill Village by then. Lucci scratched his head. It's been a while since we last reserved pirate funds. I don't have to go to Maginot anymore and can go to the Waste Terminal with you guys more often. We can take advantage of this time to reserve more and make up for what we had before, Lucci said happily. Okay. That's it, Ace said. Alright Luffy, we are going to explore the forest, Sabo shouted to Luffy. Hey, hey. Sabo, look, that's the Golden Atlas. Luffy ran over and excitedly raised the beetle in his hand to show Sabo. Wow! Luffy is so awesome, this is very rare, Sabo said to Luffy lovingly. Sabo, don't pamper him too much, Ace said, looking at Luffy with his arms crossed. Slightly Luffy made a face at Ace. Luffy! Come here! Ace shouted angrily with veins exposed. Luffy ran away with a grin on his face, trying to avoid being captured by Ace, while Lucci and Sabo chased after them with a grin on their faces. Luffy, we are going back to Windmill Village and we will be able to see Makina soon. Are you happy? Luffy said to Luffy with a smile. Are we going to see Makina? Luffy said excitedly. Yes, Makina misses you very much. Luffy needs to stay with Makina for some time recently, Lucci said happily to Luffy. We'll find you in the village, Ace said. Okay. Then Ace, you must come find me. I want to go on adventures with you, Luffy said excitedly. We're here. The Windmill Village should be ahead, Sabo said, looking at the village ahead. Ace, Sabo, I'll take Luffy there first, and then we'll go to the town together, Lucci said to Ace and Sabo. Luffy, don't walk so fast, Luffy shouted at Luffy's back. Sabo, let's go wait for Lucci on the rocks over there on the coast. Ace said as he walked towards the cliff on the coast. From here he could still see the backs of Luffy and Lucci on the road. Watching Lucci grab Luffy and tickle him, and watching them laugh happily, Ace fell into deep thought. A week later, Makina looked at Luffy with a bored look and a trace of worry flashed across her face. Luffy. Makina called Luffy with a smile. What's wrong with Makina? Luffy sat up and tilted his head to look at Makina. Luffy, can you help me wipe that table? I'll give you a piece of meat as a reward later, how about that? Makina said to Luffy with a gentle smile. Oh. I want a large portion of meat, Makina. Luffy raised his hand excitedly. Hi Makina responded with a smile. Ha ha ha. Miss Makina, we need a lot of drinks. A hearty voice came from the door of the tavern. The person who came was wearing khaki cropped pants, a white shirt with a red belt, and a yellow straw hat with a red ribbon that held down his red hair and slightly covered the 3 scars on his left eye. Boss, it's a party. The people who followed behind rushed into the tavern together, and in an instant the tavern was filled with pirates. Hi. Captain, did you have a smooth voyage? Makina greeted the captain sitting at the bar with a smile and poured wine into the captain's glass. We've harvested a lot of treasure on this voyage. Let's have a party to celebrate, said the red-haired man wearing a straw hat, laughing. Hey, hey. Are you pirates? Luffy said excitedly to Shanks beside him. Luffy. Makina shouted worriedly. Oh. Who are you? The red-haired pirate looked at him curiously. The boy in front of him was wearing a white t-shirt with an anchor pattern and a big smile on his face. My name is Luffy. Hey, what's your name? Are you really pirates? Luffy stood on the chair excitedly, looking at the red-haired pirate curiously. Ha ha ha. My name is Shanks, I'm a pirate, and these are my crew members and my friends, Shanks introduced to Luffy happily. Then you must have a lot of adventure stories, tell them to me. Luffy said excitedly while pulling Shanks' sleeve. Let me tell you about the giant goldfish we encountered on that trip. Shanks said to Luffy in a mysterious tone. Wow! That's amazing! Luffy shouted excitedly. The pirates laughed at Luffy's performance. Luffy pestered Shanks to tell him adventure stories for 4 hours. Luffy, have you always lived in this village? Shanks asked curiously while looking at little Luffy. I've always lived here, Luffy replied while eating the meat on the table. Luffy was playing at his relative's house some time ago and just came back recently, so Captain has never seen Luffy before, Makina explained to Shanks. Oh. So that's how it is. Shanks laughed. By the way, Shanks, please take me with you on your next voyage. I really want to be a pirate, Luffy said to Shanks excitedly, raising his hand. You can't be a pirate, you're too young, Shanks said with a laugh. I'm not a child anymore, I'm almost 7 years old and I'm already a man, Luffy shouted angrily. Ha ha ha, okay, don't be angry, I'll treat you to meat, Shanks said to Luffy with a smile. Wow! That's great, thank you. See? It's just a little kid. Shanks pointed at Luffy and said to the crew with a laugh. How despicable! Shanks! Luffy shouted angrily. Luffy left Shanks angrily and walked to other pirates to ask them for more adventure stories. Luffy, you haven't heard the story of my son yet, right? Jesus Bulletin greeted Luffy. Luffy sat down in front of Jesus Bulletin and looked at him expectantly. Luffy replied after he got tired of playing and returned to Shanks, looking at Shanks' straw hat. Shanks, your hat is so handsome, she said as she climbed into Shanks' arms and tried to take his hat. Luffy, this hat is very important, Shanks said with a smile while dodging Luffy. This is an important hat that has accompanied me through several battles. Even if it's you, Luffy, I can't give it to you, Shanks said softly, looking at the hat in his hand. Is that so? Okay then. Luffy sat back in his seat disappointedly. When the Red Hair Pirates sailed back to Windmill Village a few times later, there was always a happy little boy standing on the dock waiting for them. Every time Shanks returned to Windmill Village, he would play with Luffy every day, accompany him to realize his various weird ideas, take him on adventures, catch fish, and teach Luffy to swim. Chapter 10. When will Shanks sail back? Luffy sat on the dock swinging his legs boredly. Luffy! Shanks shouted happily on the boat. Wow! Shanks, you're back! Luffy said excitedly, and rushed onto the ship as soon as it docked. Shanks, tell me about your adventures, Luffy said excitedly. Oh! Just adventure stories? I brought you a gift, Shanks said mysteriously. What is what? Luffy asked curiously. Shanks took out a box from behind him and gave it to Luffy. Luffy took it and began to open it excitedly. Shanks sat next to Luffy and watched him open the gift with a smile. Wow! What a cool dagger, Luffy said excitedly, holding up a dagger with a blade cover and a handle decorated with red gems. It's beautiful, right? Although this sword of Luffy's is unopened, it is still very dangerous. Don't take it out casually, Shanks said happily to Luffy. Shanks, can you take me with you on the next voyage? I'm already very powerful. I'm almost 7 years old and I'm not a kid anymore, Luffy jumped up and down excitedly. Ha ha ha. Luffy is still asking. Jesus laughed. You can't be a pirate. You're still a kid, and it's very dangerous on the sea, Shanks said to Luffy with a big laugh. Damn it, Shanks, you don't believe me, Luffy said angrily. Shanks laughed as Luffy ran away, and turned around to explain things to Ben, but found that the deck suddenly became lively. Looking at Luffy standing on the dragon head, he didn't understand what Luffy wanted to do. Hey! Luffy, what do you want to do? Someone shouted to Luffy on the dragon head. Humph! I'm not kidding. I've had enough. I'm going to prove it to you. Luffy shouted. Ha 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 ha, it's so funny. Just try it. I really don't know what you want to do. Shanks said with a smile. Luffy is doing something interesting again, one of the pirates chuckled at Luffy. Suddenly Luffy raised the dagger Shanks gave him and stabbed it under his eyes. The pirates looked at Luffy's behavior in horror. No! The pirates shouted. Shanks rushed towards Luffy in panic. Stupid, idiot, what are you doing? Shanks shouted at Luffy. Ah, it hurts so much, Luffy shouted with a sob. Shanks hurriedly picked up Luffy and ran to the infirmary, shouting for the ship's doctor to treat his injuries while comforting the little Luffy in his arms. Cheers, brothers! Cheers to Luffy's courage and our great journey! Ha ha ha, drink it quickly! There's not enough wine. That piece of meat is mine. Stop making so much noise, I just want to eat. Stop! Fighting after drinking is too shameful. The pirates happily gathered together in the tavern to drink and eat meat. Wow! It didn't hurt at all just now, Luffy said with tears in his eyes and a smile. Nonsense! Don't do such stupid things again! Shanks yelled at Luffy angrily. I'm not afraid of getting hurt at all. Take me with you on your voyage next time. I really want to be a pirate. Luffy shouted excitedly. You can't be a pirate. Being a landlubber is a big taboo for pirates. Shanks said to Luffy with a smile. What's wrong with being a landlubber? As long as I don't fall into the sea, it'll be fine. What's more, I can be of great use in a fight. I exercise my muscles regularly. My fist is as powerful as a pistol, Luffy said excitedly. Pistol? Oh, really? Shanks said nonchalantly, supporting his head. What's with that tone of yours? Luffy yelled angrily. Hey, Luffy! You seem upset. Be happy no matter what you do. Yet, being a pirate is the most fun. The ocean is so big and vast. There are many big islands to go on adventures. The most important thing is that we are very free. The drunk pirate said happily to Luffy, his shoulder to shoulder. Luffy listened to what they said happily. You guys, stop telling him nonsense, Shanks said to them dissatisfiedly while holding a spoon in his mouth. This is the truth, right? Jesus asked Lacey with a smile. Yeah, Lucky replied with a smile. Boss, what's the big deal? Take him out to sea. Jesus said to Shanks with a smile. I thought so, Lucky responded with a smile. Wow, that's great. Luffy looked at them happily. In that case, who among you is willing to get off the boat and give him your seat? Shanks said while eating. That's the end of this topic, let's continue drinking, the pirates said as they walked back. You guys are so disrespectful. Luffy shouted angrily. The most important thing is, you are still a kid, and you want me to take you out to sea? I will only consider it after at least 10 years, Shanks said to Luffy with a smile. Shanks, you stingy guy. Let me make it clear in advance, I'm not a brat, Luffy shouted angrily at Shanks. Okay, don't be angry. Do you want a glass of juice? Shanks said with a sly smile as he moved the juice in front of Luffy. Wow! That's great, thank you. Luffy happily picked up the juice and drank it. See? It's just a little devil. So funny, I get fooled every time, Shanks laughed, slapping his thigh. That's mean, Luffy yelled angrily. Humph! I'm so tired. I even cut my face today to show my determination, but you still don't agree. Luffy said angrily with a pout. Luffy! Please be a little considerate of the boss, said the deputy captain Ben while lighting a cigarette. The vice captain wants me to be considerate of Shanks. Luffy said in surprise. Yes. After all, he is the leader of a group of pirates. He knows the fun of being a pirate, but at the same time, he also knows the hardship and danger of being a pirate. Ben said to Luffy with a smile while smoking a cigarette. Luffy tilted his head and looked at the vice captain. See? He didn't mean to make fun of your determination to become a pirate, Ben said with a smile. I don't understand. Shanks is just treating me like a fool. Luffy said to Shanks angrily. Landlubber Shanks covered his mouth and snickered at Luffy from behind. Look! Luffy said to Ben angrily. Captain! You always look so happy, Makina said with a smile. That's right, teasing this brat is my greatest pleasure, Shanks laughed and slapped the table. Luffy points at Shanks and complains to Ben. He does enjoy it, Ben shook his head helplessly. Luffy, do you want something to eat? Makina said to Luffy. Chapter 11. Great. Then use my treasure to keep accounts, Luffy replied with a smile. You are lying, kid. Where did the treasure come from? Shanks laughed at Luffy. Nonsense. I will definitely find a lot of treasures after I become a pirate. Then I will use the money to pay the bill. Luffy said while knocking on the table with his fork and spoon in his hands. Haha, I'm looking forward to it, Makina said happily. He. Luffy waited for the food expectantly. Shanks, Luffy shouted to Shanks while pulling a piece of meat. What's the matter? Shanks looked at Luffy in confusion while eating. How long do you plan to stay in this town? Luffy asked Shanks while eating. Well, I've been traveling with this town as my base for more than a year. I want to leave here and go further north after 2 or 3 more voyages, Shanks replied with a smile. Oh, after 2 or 3 more outings to sea. Luffy thought as he chewed the large amount of food in his mouth. I will definitely learn how to swim before you leave. Luffy shouted happily. Not bad. Keep up the good work. Shanks encouraged. Boom. Excuse me, a man came in arrogantly with his men, and the pirates looked at the man in silence. He, so this is a pirate. This is the first time I've seen one, and he looks really stupid. We are bandits. We are not here to rob today. Sell us 10 barrels of bartender, said the bandit. Hello, I'm very sorry, the wine is sold out today, Makino replied awkwardly. What? What do these pirates drink? Water. The bandit shouted angrily. I mean, all the drinks in the bar are here, that's all we have, said Makino. Oh. I'm so sorry that we drank all the wine in the bar. Here's an unopened bottle. If you don't mind, this is for you, Shanks said with a smile, holding up the wine in his hand. Boom. The bandit smashed the wine in Shanks' hand, and Shanks' straw hat blocked most of the wine. Luffy was startled behind him and jumped off the chair with a half-eaten fruit. The atmosphere was solemn for a few seconds. Hey! Who do you think I am, kid? Don't underestimate me. Such a small bottle of wine is not even enough to moisten your throat, said the bandit angrily. Oh my, the floor is wet. Shanks looked at the floor worriedly. Look carefully, the bandit said while holding a bounty, my head is worth 800 million Baileys. I'm a most wanted criminal. I have killed 56 self-righteous guys like you. If you know what's good for you, be careful from now on, the bandit smiled sinisterly. Shanks ignored the bandit in front of him and squatted down to pick up the broken bottle. I'm so sorry, do you have a rag, Ms. Makino? Ah, no need, I can do these things, Makino said in panic. Seeing that Shanks didn't respond to him, the bandit continued to pick up the broken bottles on the ground and angrily swept the things on the bar to the ground. Shanks sat on the ground, his hat covering his expression. You seem to like cleaning. It's worth it for you to clean up after it becomes like this. Goodbye, cowards. The bandits pushed the door open and went out. There's not even any wine, how can this be possible? Let's go to another town to have a look, the bandits said and left. Captain, are you okay? Are you hurt? Makino asked worriedly. I'm fine. Shanks waved his hand to stop Makino from coming to help him. Hey! Shanks sighed with a smile. Ha 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 ha, boss, why are you so embarrassed? Lachi laughed loudly, holding his stomach. Boss, you're being bullied so badly. Jesus Bulletin and the pirates laughed together. Ha 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 ha. Shanks sat on the ground, took off his hat and laughed with the crew. Luffy clenched his fists angrily and shouted, You are such a disgrace. Why don't you beat him up? Even if they are more numerous and powerful, you can't be bullied like this and still laugh. You are not a man or a pirate at all. Shanks looked at Luffy and said, I understand how you feel, but it's unnecessary to get angry just because some wine was spilled on you. Shanks said to Luffy with a smile as he put his hat on his head. Never mind you, I don't want to see you, a coward. Luffy turned and walked away angrily. Hey, wait a minute, Luffy. Shanks grabbed Luffy's arm and tried to ask Luffy to stay. Luffy didn't hear it and continued walking towards the door. Shanks was still holding Luffy's arm. Everyone stared in amazement as Luffy's arm grew longer. This hand is stretched. Shanks looked at it in horror. Could it be that you? The pirates looked at Luffy's arm in shock. What's going on? Luffy also noticed something was wrong and shouted in horror. It's gone. The rubber fruit that we took from the enemy ship is gone. Lachi shouted in shock, holding a treasure chest and pointing inside. What? The pirates shouted in horror. Luffy, did you eat a fruit that looks like this? Lacey quickly drew a fruit in a sketchbook and showed it to Luffy. Well, I ate it as dessert. It was really disgusting. Luffy realized that he seemed to be in trouble, and stood straight in sweat to answer Laka's question. Rubber fruit. He is the secret treasure of the sea known as the devil fruit. Anyone who eats him will turn into a rubber man. He will never be able to swim in his life. Shanks held Luffy's cheek and shouted at him in horror. What? No way. Luffy looked at Shanks in horror. You idiot. Shanks shouted at Luffy in horror. Luffy pushed Shanks away in panic and ran outside. Damn it. If I can't swim, I'll never be a pirate in my life. Luffy thought while crying. He sat down on the dock and looked at the blue sea in front of him. He felt even sadder. Shanks watched Luffy run away crying and followed him worriedly. When he saw Luffy sitting on the dock, he walked over, sat next to him and touched his hair. Luffy, I was wrong just now. I shouldn't have yelled at you. Did I scare you? Shanks said to Luffy with a smile. Shanks, will I ever be able to become a pirate? Luffy threw himself into Shanks' arms and burst into tears. How could that be? The sea is free and embraces everyone. Even if you can't swim, you can still be a pirate as long as you don't fall into the water. Shanks patted Luffy's back and comforted him softly. Really? Luffy asked in a crying voice. Of course. Besides, after becoming a rubber man, you don't have to be afraid of blunt injuries like fists. You only have to worry about slashes and the like. It's fun, right? It's very powerful, Shanks said to Luffy with a smile. Really? Thank you Shanks. Luffy smiled happily. Shanks smiled and rubbed Luffy's head and said, You're still a brat. Waste terminal. Ace, Lucci, and Sabo hid behind a rock and watched the gang of thugs in front of them, ready to rob their treasures when they passed by. Chapter 12. Lucci, Sabo, they are coming soon. When they get close, we will surround them and attack them together. Ace said to Lucci and Sabo while looking at the thugs in front. Lucci and Sabo nodded as they clenched the pipes in their hands. Okay, go ahead, Ace yelled, and they all jumped out and surrounded the group. A few little devils want to rob us. They really overestimate their own abilities, said the leader of the gangsters angrily. Hand over the treasure in your hand. Ace rushed forward, knocked down the people blocking his way and attacked the leader. Lucci and Sabo followed closely behind, clearing out the people on both sides, and soon the enemies were knocked to the ground. Ace, Sabo and Lucci searched the wallets of the fallen gangsters. These guys have a lot of money. The pirate fund is getting bigger and bigger, Sabo said excitedly. Yeah, we're almost raising enough funds for the pirate ship, Lucci said with a smile. Let's put the treasure back and then go hunt for dinner, Ace said to Lucci and Sabo. Three boys sat around a roasting animal in a clearing in the forest, excitedly biting into the food in their hands. I don't know how Luffy is doing. I haven't seen him for a few months, Lucci said while biting the flesh on his hand. He's probably crying somewhere, Ace said disdainfully. We pirates have almost stockpiled enough, so we can go to the village to find Luffy, Sabo said as he watched Ace and Lucci eat. The old man hasn't been here for several months. I don't know when he will come, Lucci said helplessly. But you can go and see Luffy. I wonder how Luffy is doing recently. Will he get into trouble again? Lucci said with a smile. We'll find out when we go to the village tomorrow, Ace said. Hey! Uncle from the fish shop, I want to buy fish, Luffy said to the uncle from the fish shop with a smile on his face. Hello, Luffy, you look very happy recently. I heard that the pirates refused to take you out to sea again recently. The fisherman said to Luffy with a smile. Yeah. And my body will become unable to swim for the rest of my life, but it doesn't matter. Because I want to be a pirate who will never fall into the sea, even though I will be a landlubber all my life. Luffy said with a smile. The most important thing is that I have eaten the rubber fruit and turned into a rubber man. It's much more fun to be a rubber man. Look. Luffy said with his cheeks stretched. Captain has been out to sea for several days. You must be feeling lonely, Luffy. Makina looked at Luffy with a smile. Not at all. I still can't forgive him for what happened with the bandits. Luffy said angrily. I thought too highly of Shanks and the others. I always thought they were great pirates. I'm so disappointed. Luffy angrily lay on the table with the empty cup in his mouth. Really? I don't think so. I think it's really amazing that you can remain calm even after being bullied so badly. Makina said with a smile. Makina, you really don't understand anything. As a man, you should take action when it's time to take action. Luffy said with a pout. Really? I don't understand. Makina said with a smile. Well, you don't understand, Luffy said, pouting and lying on the table with a bored look. There was a sound of the door opening, and Luffy looked at the door in surprise. Ah! Luffy looked at the bandits coming in disappointedly. The pirates are not here today. It's so nice to be quiet here. We just happened to pass by here, so come in and sit down. The bandit pushed the door open and came in. Bang! The bandit put the gun heavily on the table. Why are you standing there? We are the guests. Bring us some wine. The bandit shouted. Makina walked towards the mayor's office in panic. Mayor. This is bad. What happened, Makina? Why are you so flustered? The mayor looked at Makina while holding a cup of tea. Luffy was captured by bandits, Makina said breathlessly. This body is really interesting. It doesn't react at all whether I kick or hit it, the bandit said while grabbing Luffy. Hey, go and rescue Luffy. The villager who was hiding and watching said to another one. But, they're bandits. They'll be killed. And it seems like Luffy started this dispute. Another one argued. Damn it. Apologize to me now. You bad guy. Luffy was grabbed by the bandit and his cheek was pulled. He struggled and tried to hit him with his fists. Rubber man? There are such strange creatures in the world. The bandit said and threw Luffy out. We have discovered a new species. We should be able to make a fortune if we sell it to the circus, said the bandit, stroking his beard. Damn it. I will never forgive you. Oh. Luffy rushed forward with a piece of wood. Too annoying. The bandit stepped on Luffy. Little brat, they are happily drinking and chatting. Did something offend you? You said it. Apologize now. Damn it. Move your foot away. Stupid bandit. Luffy yelled angrily. Really? How could Luffy go against those bandits? The villager who was peeking at the side said excitedly. Let go of that kid. The mayor ran over and shouted. I don't know what Luffy did, and I'm not going to argue with you. If you don't mind, we are willing to pay the ransom. Please let the child go, the mayor said, kneeling on the ground. Mayor. Luffy looked at the mayor's behavior in surprise. As expected of an older man, you know your way around things, but I can't stand being insulted by a rubber-weak kid. You are the ones who are wrong. You mountain monkeys. Luffy said angrily. Okay, I won't sell you anymore. I'd rather kill you on the spot. The bandit pointed a knife at Luffy. Luffy. Please. Spare him. The mayor pleaded. No wonder no one greeted us at the port. What happened? Shanks said from behind the crowd. Captain Makina looked at Shanks in surprise. Aren't they just those bandits from last time? Luffy, didn't you say that your fists are as powerful as pistols? Shanks said with a smile. I'm so annoyed. Luffy shouted angrily as he was pinned down by the bandits. These pirates are still staying in this town. Have you been helping the townspeople with the spring cleanup? Said the bandit. I don't know what you are here for, but I'd like to give you a piece of advice, get out of here if you don't want to get hurt. Shanks said as he walked towards the bandits. If you come any closer I'll shoot you. Cowards. One of the bandits pointed a gun at Shanks and said, Hey, you bastard, didn't you hear me? If you come any closer, I'll blow your head off. Ha 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 ha. Since you've pulled out your gun, let's gamble with your life. Shanks stared at him and said. Ah? What are you talking about? The bandits' men said in panic. I mean this isn't a scary tool. Shanks said, pointing at his gun. Boom. Chapter 13. Luffy, Makina and the others looked at him in surprise when Lachi suddenly shot the bandit with a gun. They actually fired shots. How unreasonable. You are so despicable. The bandits shouted in surprise. Despicable? Stop saying such childish things. Do you think we are saints? The one standing in front of you is a pirate. Ben said, looking at them. Shut up. We're not picking on you at all. A bandit shouted angrily. Listen carefully, bandits. Even if you pour food or wine on my head, or spit on me, I can just laugh it off. But, no matter what the reason is, I will never let go of the guy who hurt my friends easily. Shanks said seriously, staring at the bandits in front of him. Shanks! Luffy murmured in surprise. Ha ha ha! You actually said you won't let me go. The bandit laughed loudly. A pirate drifting around in the sea. You actually said something like that in front of a bandit. It's so funny. Brothers, kill them. The bandits ordered. Come on together. The bandits rushed forward. I'm alone, that's enough. Ben said to the bandits rushing towards him. Ben rushed forward and pressed the cigarette butt on the head of the bandit in front of him. Ah! It's so hot! Swoosh! Ben pulled out the gun from his waist and knocked the surrounding bandits to the ground in an instant. Don't be so arrogant, bandit. If you want to fight us, you'd better get a warship, Ben said while lighting a cigarette. Too strong. Luffy looked at him in surprise. Ah! Wait a minute, this guy provoked me first. The bandit shouted in panic. Anyway, you are wanted, right? Shanks said calmly. Bastard! The bandit shouted angrily. Boom! It's a smoke bomb. Come here, kid. Damn it! Let me go, let me go! Luffy Shanks shouted in surprise. It's over. Luffy was captured without me being careful. What should I do? Shanks said in horror, covering his head with his hands. Boss, don't panic. Let's work together to find that bastard. Lacey shouted to Shanks. Really, this guy? Ben looked at him helplessly. Ace, Sabo and Lucci stood on the street looking at the deserted village and had a bad feeling. Lucci, why is there no one in the village? Sabo asked puzzledly. I don't know. Everyone in the village should be gathering on the streets at this time. Lucci had a bad feeling as he looked at the empty streets. There are a lot of people gathered at the dock, let's go take a look, Ace shouted from the front. Sabo and Lucci hurriedly ran towards the dock. Lucci looked at the crowd and hurriedly followed Ace to the front. Why is there a boat in the sea? There seems to be a child on it. Ace asked puzzledly. Makina, what happened? Lucci hurriedly ran to Makina and asked. Luffy is on that ship. He was caught by bandits, Makina said in panic. What? Lucci and Sabo shouted in horror. Oh no! Luffy was thrown into the sea by bandits. What should we do? Who will save him? A villager shouted in horror. Lucci, Ace, and Sabo shouted in horror. Luffy. Ha 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 ha. We finally escaped. I didn't expect the bandits to escape to the sea. Okay, I've dragged you here as a hostage, but you're of no use now, the bandit said to Luffy on the other side of the ship. Go to hell. Luffy punched the bandit angrily. Puff. Goodbye. The bandit kicked Luffy off the boat. Ha 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 ha. Damn it. Damn it. The bandits in the tavern were drinking and chatting. Do you remember the pirates' expressions at that time? They didn't dare to say a word after being splashed with wine. They were so useless. Ha 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 ha. I get really annoyed when I see those little brats. I want to kill them. Pirates are just pretending, said the bandit leader with a big laugh. Shut up. Don't underestimate Shanks and his friends. They are not cowards. Luffy shouted angrily. Ah! Stop talking, Luffy. Makina pulled Luffy from behind, trying to stop him. Asshole! Asshole! He's a scumbag. But I can't even hit him. Damn it! Luffy thought angrily. Goo, 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 a huge sea monster suddenly emerged from behind the boat. What kind of monster is this? The bandit looked at the sea beast in front of him in horror. Oh no! A sea monster is rushing towards Luffy. Luffy! Ace, Lucci, and Sabo looked at the sea monster in horror as it swam towards Luffy. Look! There's someone in the water. Damn it! What should I do? It's too late. Lucci looked at him anxiously. When the sea monster was biting, Shanks suddenly appeared and picked up little Luffy. Shanks! Get out! Shanks stared at the sea beast with horror eyes. The sea beast and Shanks looked at each other and then turned and swam away in fear. Thank you, Luffy. Makina told me everything. You stood up for us. Shanks said to Luffy with a smile. Woo, woo. Luffy grabbed Shanks' clothes and cried. Hey, if you're a man, stop crying. Shanks smiled at Luffy. But, Shanks, your hand. Luffy cried, grabbing the clothes on Shanks' chest. It's nothing. It's just a hand. I'm glad you're okay. Shanks said to Luffy with a smile. Woo, woo, woover wawoo, Luffy cried loudly. Shanks swam towards the shore with Luffy. Boss, are you okay? Jesus was shocked to see Shanks holding Luffy in his arms, covered in blood. Luffy tightly grasped Shanks' clothes and cried. Jesus wanted to hold Luffy down, but Luffy refused to let go. Luffy, Lucci, Ace, and Sabo quickly approached the two and rushed forward to try to take Luffy off Shanks. Lucci, Ace, and Sabo looked at Shanks' arm in shock. Lucci, woover wawoo, Luffy cried loudly in Lucci's arms. Ben quickly stepped forward and supported Shanks. Quick, call the ship's doctor over, Ben shouted. Ben, I'll leave it to you, Shanks said with a smile to Ben. Shanks was taken for treatment, and Lucci hugged Luffy tightly, as if he was holding his whole world. He had never felt so helpless before. He knew Luffy was in danger but couldn't help him. He almost lost him. Chapter 14. Shanks woke up in the dark at night, looked at Ben leaning against the door smoking, and wanted to sit up. Ben saw Shanks wake up and went over to help him onto the bed. Ben, how's Luffy? Shanks asked while enduring the pain in his arm. Luffy is fine, he just cried all afternoon. He was coaxed to sleep by his brother not long ago, and he is still sleeping now. Ben said while smoking a cigarette. Brother? Shanks asked doubtfully. There are 3 boys. I only know that one of them is called Lucci and he should be his brother. I don't know the names of the other 2 yet, Ben said. Knock knock knock. Sabo knocked on the door in front. Ace and Lucci were standing behind Sabo waiting. Hello. Excuse me, Captain, are you awake? Sabo took off his hat and asked Ben politely. Already awake, Ben said, opening the door to let them in. Sabo, Ace, and Luffy walked to Shanks' bed and bowed to him. Captain, thank you for saving Luffy. You're welcome. I'm glad I managed to save Luffy, Shanks said with a smile. Are you Luffy's brothers? Shanks looked at them curiously. Yes, sorry, I haven't introduced myself yet. Sabo scratched his head embarrassedly. My name is Sabo, the one with black hair is Ace, and the one with golden hair is Lucci, Sabo introduced to Shanks. No last name? Shanks asked puzzledly. Lucci and Ace. Sabo looked at each other. After a while, Lucci stood up and said, my full name is Monkey D. Lucci. Poor gas D. Ace said while holding the pipe. Sabo, but Sabo doesn't have a last name, Sabo said to Shanks with a smile. Shanks looked at Ace and felt that he was familiar, but he couldn't remember what it was. Shanks. Luffy rushed in and jumped onto the bed, grabbing Shanks' clothes and crying loudly. Luffy. Lucci looked at Luffy rushing in surprise. Okay. Luffy, I'm fine, don't worry. Shanks said while touching Luffy's hair. I'm sorry. Woo, Verwa, Shanks your arm. Luffy cried loudly at Shanks. Okay, I'm fine. It's just a hand, I'm glad you're okay, Luffy. Shanks touched Luffy's back and comforted him. Soon Luffy cried himself to sleep, and Lucci reached out to take Luffy off Shanks. Shanks waved his hand to stop Lucci. He must be frightened today, let him sleep here tonight. Shanks used his other hand to cover Luffy with the blanket. Sabo and Lucius looked at each other and said, then we will go back first. Captain, take good care of your injuries. Ha ha ha. Just call me Shanks, Shanks said to them with a smile. Lucci, Ace, and Sabo smiled broadly at Shanks. Thank you again for saving Luffy, he is my important brother. Lucci bowed again. Shanks waved his hand, and they returned to their room to rest. For the next 2 days, Luffy stayed by Shanks' side and didn't want to leave. At night, looking at Shanks sleeping on the bed, Luffy stood by with a pillow in his arms, poked Shanks' face and whispered Shanks. After a while, Shanks rubbed his sleepy eyes and looked at Luffy. What's wrong, Luffy, can't you sleep? Shanks, I want to sleep with you, little Luffy whispered. Okay, come in. Shanks pulled back the quilt and let Luffy come up. When Shanks was about to fall asleep, Shanks, how many days are you going to stay here? Will you come back after this voyage? Luffy grabbed Shanks' clothes and asked softly. It's time to set sail once your wounds are healed. We've been staying in town for a long time, said Shanks, touching Luffy's hair. Shanks, am I evil? Shanks paused as he was ruffling Luffy's hair. Why do you say that? Shanks asked, lifting his face. That's what the kids in the village said. They said I was an evil monster and they didn't want to play with me, Luffy said with tears in his eyes. Shanks looked Luffy in the eyes and said, do you think you are evil? No. Then you are not evil. You are what you think you are. You are not a monster. You are just stronger than others. Shanks said to Luffy with a smile, then hugged Luffy tightly, patting his back gently to coax him to sleep. Ace stood behind the door and listened to the conversation inside. After a moment of silence, he turned around and left. Ace walked to the deck and looked at the dark ocean in silence. He never thought that Luffy, who was happy every day, would hear such words, and no one had ever answered like Shanks did. The next day when Luffy was not around, Ace walked up to Shanks and after a moment of silence, he lowered his head and asked, what do you think would happen if Roger had a child? It will be hard for him, but no matter whose child he is still himself. Everyone is a child of the sea, Shanks said to Ace with a smile. So do you think he should live? No matter whose child he is, he has the right to live and no one can deny his existence. Shanks looked at Ace and said. Ace lowered his head and ran out quickly. Sabo and Lucci watched Ace run out from Shanks' door. Sabo looked at Ace's back and noticed that his expression was not right, so he said to Lucci, I'll go check it out, and followed Ace. Lucci looked at the backs of Ace and Sabo walking away, and after thinking for a while, he turned his head and walked towards Shanks' room. Shanks, how do you feel? Lucci asked Shanks with a smile. Much better. If Ben hadn't stopped me from drinking, I would have gotten better faster, Shanks said with a smile as he drank the drink in his hand. What is your relationship with Monkey D. Garp? Shanks asked curiously. Garp is my grandpa, Lucci said with a smile, touching his head. It seems that my guess was right, Shanks said with a smile. Shanks, I want to ask you something about devil fruits. I ate a strange fruit some time ago. Luffy told me how it felt when he ate a devil fruit. I think I ate the same thing. Do you know what this is? Luffy took out the devil fruit he had drawn and showed it to Shanks. I don't think I've seen this before. I don't know much about devil fruits, but there should be a devil fruit encyclopedia somewhere. You can check it out. Shanks said to Lucci. Okay, thank you Shanks. And thank you for taking care of Luffy some time ago. I'll go back first, Lucci said to Shanks with a smile. Shanks shook his head as he watched Luffy leave. Really, his personality is completely opposite to Luffy's. A few days later, Shanks' injury was almost healed, and they were ready to set sail tomorrow morning. They would not return to Windmill Village after this voyage. Before setting sail, Shanks spent one last day with Luffy. The next morning, at the Windmill Village pier. Shanks, after you go out to sea this time, are you really never going back to town? Luffy asked Shanks. That's right. We've stayed here for a long time and now we have to say goodbye. You must be sad, Luffy. Shanks said to Luffy with a smile. Well, although I'm a little sad, I won't force you to take me with you. I decided to become a pirate based on my own strength. Luffy said happily to Shanks. I won't take you there anyway, Shanks said playfully, sticking his tongue out at Luffy, you can't be a pirate. I can do it. One day, I will be able to gather partners stronger than you. Then I will find the biggest treasure in the world, and I will become the Pirate King. Luffy shouted firmly. Hee. Want to surpass us? Well. Shanks said as he took off his hat with a smile, then I'll leave this hat with you for now. This is a hat that I cherish very much. Shanks said as he put the hat heavily on Luffy's head. Luffy clenched his fists and shed silent tears. You must return him to me in the future, when you become an excellent pirate, Shanks looked back at Luffy and said with a smile. Lucci stepped forward and placed his hands on Luffy's shoulders while Ace and Sabo stood beside Luffy and watched. That boy is going to be great, Ben said to Shanks. Yes. Because he looks exactly like me when I was a kid. Shanks said with a smile. Weigh the anchor. Hoist the sail. Set sail. Chapter 15. Foothills of Mount Golpo. Garp angrily held the struggling Lucci in his left hand and pulled Luffy's cheek with his right hand, walking through the forest on the path to Mount Golpo. Grandpa! Put me down now! Lucci struggled in Garp's arms and shouted at him angrily. Grandpa! I've already told you, I want to be the Pirate King. Luffy shouted while struggling with Garp grabbing his cheek. What pirate king? Garp yelled at Luffy angrily. Let me go. You bastard grandpa. Lucci struggled in Garp's hands. You've eaten a devil fruit and you're still talking nonsense. Luffy, you and Lucci are going to become the strongest navy in the future. It hurts so much. Damn it. I've turned into a rubber man, why is it still so painful? Grandpa, let me go. Luffy struggled and shouted. Damn old man. Let Luffy go. Lucci struggled and tried to attack Garp. It was a mistake for me to leave you two in the leisurely windmill village. You actually want to be a pirate. You idiot. And you hang out with that red-haired Shanks, it's outrageous. Garp said to Luffy angrily. I want to be a strong man like Shanks. Lucci and I will become great pirates. Luffy shouted while grabbing the tree. Why did you include me? Lucci wiped the sweat from his forehead silently. Bastard. Lucci. Garp shouted at Lucci. Hey. Lucci looked at Luffy helplessly. Knock knock. Isn't this Dodon's house? Luffy walked back and forth. Does the old man know Dodon? Lucci looked at Garp curiously as he knocked on the door hard. It's so noisy. Who is trying to kill himself? Dodon opened the door and shouted. It's me. Garp said calmly. Ka, Mr. Cap. Dodon stepped back in panic. You look quite energetic. Garp picked his nose and looked at Dodon with a blank expression. What a joke. Leave us alone. Ace is already 10 years old. We can't control him anymore. Really? He's grown so big already. Is he okay? Are you going to take him back now? Asked Dodon. Compared to this, Luffy and Lucci, come here and say hello. Garp picked up Luffy and Lucci. Hey. Long time no see, Dodon, Luffy said with a smile. Hey, where is Dodon Ace? Luffy asked. Ah, why are these two little devils here? Dodon stepped back in fear. These two are my grandchildren. You will be responsible for raising them from now on, Garp continued. Are these two little kids your grandchildren? Dodon looked at the two little kids in front of him in surprise. Ace. Sabo. Lucci saw Sabo and Ace dragging the bear out from the forest. Ace. Sabo. Luffy waved excitedly at Ace and Sabo who were coming over. Luffy? How did you get here? Ace asked in surprise. Wow! Ace, you are so awesome! You hit such a big piece of meat! Luffy excitedly rushed towards Ace and hugged him. Luffy! Let me go! Ace shouted angrily with a red face. Sabo touched Luffy's head and asked with amusement, Luffy, am I not awesome? Sabo is awesome too. Sabo, let's go have a barbecue. Luffy said excitedly while drooling at the bear. Luffy. Why are you here? Sabo asked Luffy. We came here with Grandpa. Luffy said while pulling Sabo. Maybe we will have to live with you in the future. Grandpa will leave us to Dodon to raise, Lucci said helplessly. Really? Then you don't have to run back and forth, Ace said happily. It seems like you guys are getting along very well. Luffy and Lucci, this is Ace. You'll be living with him from now on, so get along well with him. Garp said, looking at the four people standing together. Grandpa. We already knew Ace before, Lucci said with a smile. Is that so? Then I don't have to worry. Garp laughed. So who are you, kid? Garp looked at the blonde boy holding Luffy's hand. Hello. Mr. Garp, I'm Sabo, Sabo said with a smile on his face. Sabo is my friend. Luffy shouted happily. Is that so? Then you are my grandson too. Ha 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 ha. I have another grandson. Garp laughed and gave his four grandsons a loving iron fist. It hurts, Grandpa. Asshole. Old man. Smelly old man. Sabo covered his swollen head and suddenly realized that this situation might happen frequently in the future. He couldn't help but feel like he was on a pirate ship. Ha ha ha. I'm going back first. Dodon, you have to train them to become the strongest navy. Garp waved his hand and walked down the mountain. I'm a bandit. How can I possibly train them to become navy? Dodon cursed loudly at Garp's back. Luffy, Lucci, Ace, and Sabo would conduct 100 training sessions in the forest every day. I'm going to attack. Rubber rubber pistol. Luffy swung his arms and rushed towards Ace on the opposite side, but his arm suddenly bent and hit the ground, and then suddenly bounced back and hit Luffy's own face. Ace was a little surprised at the power of Luffy's arm, but he didn't expect the arm to suddenly hit the ground and bounce back to Luffy's face. He was speechless. Hey you! What are you thinking about? Ace hit back angrily and defeated Luffy. Okay, Ace wins. Next Ace vs. Sabo. Lucci said standing aside. I will never lose to anyone, absolutely. Ace thought as he stared at Sabo. I want to become stronger. I want to become stronger, Sabo thought while staring at Ace. Ace and Sabo rushed at each other, but Sabo's final blow was dodged by Ace. Sabo. I won. Ace had a smirk on his face and attacked Sabo, knocking him away. Ace, it seems like it's my turn against you next, Lucci said excitedly as he walked to Ace's side. I won't lose, Lucci. Ace said with a smirk as he stared at Lucci. Ha! I don't know how to do that either. Let me show you my new trick. Lucci had a mysterious smile on his face. Lucci and Ace attacked each other. After several rounds, Ace finally dodged Lucci's fist and tried to kick Lucci in the waist, but his kick missed. Ace turned back and landed in confusion, looking around cautiously. Luffy and Sabo watched in shock as Lucci suddenly disappeared, and suddenly Lucci appeared behind Ace and kicked Ace to the ground. Ace! I win this round, Lucci said to Ace with a smile. Damn it! Why did you disappear just now? Ace shouted angrily. Yes. Lucci, what did you just do? Why did you suddenly disappear and suddenly appear behind Ace? Sabo and Luffy came up and asked curiously. This is my devil fruit. Lucci said happily. Wow! Devil fruit? Lucci, do you have one too? Luffy asked excitedly. Yes, I ate it accidentally when I was looking for food in the forest. I found out its name from Shank's Devil Fruit Encyclopedia and it's called Shadow Fruit, Lucci explained to them. Then what can you do? Sabo asked curiously. Ace and Luffy looked at Lucci with the same curiosity. I can enter your shadow just by stepping on your shadow, and then come out at any time. I can also hide things in my own shadow. Lucci said as he demonstrated it to them. Wow, so awesome! Luffy shouted excitedly. It's no use. Men should fight head-on. Ace said disdainfully. Ha 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 ha. But Ace, you were still defeated by my ability. Lucci said to Ace with a big laugh. It's so noisy. Ace shouted with a red face. I think Lucci's ability is very useful. It can catch people off guard and is also helpful for infiltration, Sabo analyzed to Lucci with a smile. Lucci, what else can your fruit do? Sabo asked curiously. I'm not sure what I can do yet. I'm still practicing, Lucci said awkwardly, scratching his hair. As for the shadow, the devil fruit is related to the shadow. Lucci, can you separate the shadow? Or can you hide things? For example, put things into the shadow. Sabo looked at Lucci and asked. This method seems to work. I can feel the space in the shadow. Lucci closed his eyes and felt it. Lucci held the tube in his hand and tried to put it away. Lucci waited for a while, but the tube did not respond. Lucci opened his eyes and looked at Sabo and said, it doesn't seem to work. Wait. Lucci, try this first. Sabo picked up a leaf from the tree next to him and handed it to Lucci. Lucci took the leaf in his hand and repeated the action just now. Sabo, Ace, and Luffy stared at the leaf in Lucci's hand nervously. After a while, the leaf slowly disappeared in Lucci's hand. So cool! The leaves disappeared. Luffy shouted excitedly beside him. Then Lucci, can you save the meat? Luffy said excitedly, and Ace knocked on Luffy's head. Ace! Why? Luffy shouted at Ace, covering the bump on his head. Luffy! All you care about is meat. He shouted angrily. Luffy can't do it for now. He can probably only fit small things in now. Lucci explained. Well. I can't even put meat in it, Luffy sighed in disappointment and pouted. By the way Ace, I'm already 7 years old. I want to go to the waste terminal with you guys, Luffy shouted to Ace and the others. Ace, Lucci, and Sabo looked at each other with smiles. Okay. Luffy, let's go to town today. We'll sell crocodile skin first and then take you to eat delicious food, said Ace. Yeah. Luffy shouted excitedly. Chapter 16. Ace. Sabo. Wait for me. Luffy's voice echoed softly among the trees of the forest. They were on their way to the waste terminal. Now they were approaching the edge of the forest. The waste terminal was on the north side of the mountain. Waste terminal is a large, depressing garbage dump surrounded by high walls surrounding a nearby city. The island is home to a kingdom called the Kingdom of Goa. The Kingdom of Goa is a rather beautiful and wealthy city, filled with nobles and merchants. Inside town, the city is a beacon of prosperity, and every night, garbage is collected from every residential and commercial area of the city, and then twice a day, it is promptly dumped outside the city gates into the growing ocean of garbage that surrounds it. Of course, the Kingdom of Goa also dumps what it considers to be the dregs of society and the garbage of the people outside its gates, so the waste terminal gathers a large number of poor, homeless, and unfortunate people, and it is also the home of most of the scum. To the north of the waste terminal is the town, which is surrounded by a solid stone wall. The only entrance is the town gate, which is usually guarded. Residents of the waste terminal often go to the town to sell some recycled materials. In the center of the town is a high town where princes and nobles live. No one except the nobles is allowed to enter the high town. Inside is the palace, where the royal family of the Kingdom of Goa lives. In the alleys of the border town. It's great to be able to sell the crocodile skin at a high price. The pirate savings have increased again. Sabo said happily. I'm hungry. Luffy said frustratedly. Hold on a little longer, I'll treat you to delicious ramen next, Ace said to Luffy with a smile. What is ramen? Is it really delicious? Sabo asked curiously. Anything is fine, I want to eat quickly. Luffy said frustratedly. Okay, in order to eat ramen as soon as possible, we should disguise ourselves again, said Lucci. Lucci supported Sabo and Ace from below, and they put on their cloaks and disguised themselves as an adult, walking in the town. Luffy carefully pulled their cloaks and followed them, looking around, just like an adult with their children. Luffy, don't make any noise and just follow us, otherwise we won't take you to eat ramen, Ace said to Luffy in a low voice. Oh, Luffy rubbed his stomach in frustration. The boys disguised as adults stood in front of a store called Haute Cuisine. This is the store, Ace said with a smile as he looked at the store. Welcome. The shop owner bent down to greet them with a smile on his face. The shop owner looked up and saw their dirty cloaks, and waved his hands hastily, saying, This is embarrassing for us, this is not the shop you should come to. Sabo, who was stacked in the middle, rummaged through his clothes and took out a pocket watch. Give me a VIP room. That badge is. The shop owner looked at the pocket watch in Sabo's hand in panic. It's such an honor to have you, the nobleman. I'll prepare it right away. The shop owner hurriedly bowed and led them into the VIP room on the 4th floor. You really have a good thing, Ace said to Sabo in surprise. Ha, I picked it up in town before, Sabo said with a guilty conscience. Lucci looked at the pocket watch in Sabo's hand and said nothing. 3 servings of ramen. Sorry for the long time you've been waiting. Please enjoy. The waiter brought the ramen. Is this ramen? Sabo looked at the fragrant ramen in front of him with surprise. It looks delicious. Luffy said excitedly. Come on, try it. Ace pulled down his cloak happily. Wow! It's delicious. I can't wait. Lucci happily picked up the ramen in front of him. One more, oh, Luffy just shouted when Ace and Sabo covered his mouth. Lucci coughed softly, suppressed his voice and shouted at the door in a deep voice, another bowl. Hi! The waiter hurried down to prepare. Before long, their bowls of ramen had filled the table, and when Luffy reached out to take another bowl, his disguise was quickly discovered by the ramen shop owner. Oh no! We are exposed. Lucci said as he looked around quickly. Damn it! Ace shouted in shock. Run! Sabo shouted, breaking the window, and then Ace jumped out with Sabo, and Lucci pulled Luffy and jumped out of the window. Someone is eating and dashing. Come and help me catch them. The restaurant owner shouted from upstairs. After Ace, Sabo, Lucci, and Luffy jumped down, they immediately ran towards the city gate. Stop them! Don't let them run away! The guards chased Ace and the others. We lost 36 bowls of ramen and a wall of glass. The store manager said angrily, with his hands on his hips, looking at the broken glass. Store manager, they also left a note like this. A waiter hurried over and handed the note to the store manager. What? The store manager looked angrily at the note in his hand which read Pay with treasure Luffy. Sabo? Isn't this Sabo? Wait. Are you still alive? Come home with me. When Ace, Sabo, Luffy, and Lucci passed by a noble, the noble called out to Sabo from behind. Sabo, he's calling you. Ace said to the person calling Sabo from behind. Who is he? Luffy asked curiously. Lucci looked at the nobles behind him curiously, then turned to look at Sabo. Sabo looked at the person behind him and said through gritted teeth, he must have recognized the wrong person. Let's go. After Ace, Lucci, and Luffy escaped to the edge of a cliff in the forest, they surrounded Sabo and stared at him. What are you doing? I have nothing to hide from you. Sabo said. Really? Luffy tilted his head in a silly manner. How is this possible? Tell me, Sabo. How can there be a secret between us? Ace shouted at Sabo. Lucci looked at them with a guilty conscience. Sabo looked at the serious looks that Ace and Luffy were giving him, and he turned his head away guiltily and said, I've already said it, nothing. Hurry up and tell me, bastard. Be careful or I'll beat you up. Ace and Luffy grabbed Sabo's collar and shook him hard. I said it. Sabo shouted with a blue face. Ah. Lucci didn't expect this to be the answer, and then he relaxed. Son of a noble? Who? Ace Luffy asked coldly. Me. Sabo shouted angrily. Well, then what? Ace, Luffy, and Lucci looked at Sabo boredly while picking their noses. You were the ones who asked me. Sabo shouted at them angrily. Actually, I'm not an orphan, my parents are still alive, and I didn't grow up in the waste terminal. It was my father who called me today. Sorry, I lied to you. Sabo whispered while sitting under the tree. Ace looked at Sabo in surprise. He's already apologized, just forgive him. Luffy said to Ace and Lucci. Ah, I can see that. When we first met, I knew you weren't from Waste Terminal, but I didn't expect you to run away from Gout Town. Lucci said, scratching his head. This incident hit me hard. You are from a noble family, so why would you go to a place like that? Ace turned around with a sullen face and walked towards the edge of the cliff. The reason I ran away from home is because... Sabo looked ahead silently and recalled his childhood memories. Chapter 17. Sabo, you must cultivate the wisdom and manners that match your noble status, and become a man who can marry a royal daughter in the future. Sabo's father said to little Sabo with a smile. Then we can rest assured, and you will definitely be happy. Sabo's mother covered her mouth and laughed softly. Will I be happy if I marry a daughter of a royal family? Little Sabo looked at his parents in confusion. Yes, Sabo. Sabo's mother replied with a smile, her eyes flashing with an inexplicable light. Well, I will try my best. Sabo said happily to his parents. What did you say? The cargo ship sank. There's no need to care about the lives of the crew. What about the cargo I paid for? Sabo's father shouted to the person on the other side of the den mushi. Boom boom boom. Dad. Look, this is the painting I drew. Sabo opened the door and happily showed his father his first portrait. Sabo's father took the drawing paper, tore it up without even looking at it, and said to Sabo seriously, if you have time to draw this kind of picture, go back to your room and study. Sabo walked out the door in tears and disappointment. Hey! You guy, I am a child of the royal family, a relative of the king, and you are carrying me back. Said a boy in a purple dress arrogantly. Sabo ignored him and walked around him. The child caught up and grabbed Sabo, but Sabo pushed him away. You're just a noble's child. Let me show you how powerful I am. The child angrily took out a knife and rushed towards Sabo. Stop, stop. Sabo looked at the child rushing towards him with a knife and pushed him to the ground. Sabo. Did you fight with the royal child? Sabo's mother apologized to the royal child in horror. But I'm injured. Sabo explained to his mother from behind. Sabo looked at his mother with grievance as she ignored him and asked him to apologize to the royal children. Those guys like someone who can keep their status and property, not me. If I can't marry the daughter of a royal family, I'll be trash to them. Sabo lowered his head. For this reason, I study in class in my room every day. If I don't do well, my parents will quarrel every day, and I'll be a burden in that family. I'm sorry to say this to you, but even if I had parents, I'd still be alone. Sabo recalled what his father said when he went to the waste terminal because of him. Although the nobles despise the people of waste terminal, life in waste terminal is much better than living a life prepared for you by others in that suffocating gout town. Sabo said calmly. I see. Lucci looked at Sabo and said. Ace, Lucci, Luffy, we must go out to sea, leave this country and enjoy freedom. Travel around the world, I will write down my experiences in a book. Sabo shouted happily as he looked at them. Hee hee. Of course. We can do it without you telling us. Ace said happily to Sabo. I want to be a pirate, and keep winning, being invincible, and finally gaining the highest fame. Only this can be the proof of my life. Even if the whole world does not acknowledge my existence, even if they all hate me, I will become a great pirate and make them look at me with new eyes. I will not run away. I will not lose to anyone. Even if my name becomes synonymous with terror. I will let my name shock the world. Ace laughed and shouted to the sea. I want to explore the world, see what's happening, become stronger and stronger, and be able to protect the people I love no matter what kind of crisis I encounter. Lucci shouted to the sea. Hee hee hee. Is that so? Okay. Me. Luffy shouted towards the sea. The world seemed to have fallen silent, leaving only the sound of waves hitting the shore. Hey! Ace, Sabo, and Lucci looked at what Luffy said in shock. Ha 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 ha. Luffy, come on, only you can say that. Lucci covered his face with amusement. I thought you were going to say something. Ace looked at Luffy speechlessly. Ah ha 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 ha. You're so funny, Luffy. I'm looking forward to your future. Sabo laughed, holding his stomach. Then all four of us want to be the captain. That's going to be troublesome, right? Sabo said. I didn't think of that. Sabo, I thought you would definitely be my navigator. Ace said to Sabo. Luffy shouted from the side, you all get on my ship. Impossible. Ace hit Luffy's head with the pipe. Sorry, Luffy, I want to be the captain myself. Sabo said to Luffy with a smile. Hey, isn't this great? Just get on my ship. Just get on my ship. Luffy argued loudly. This matter is not negotiable. Ace said loudly angrily. No. Sabo refused. What did you say? Luffy shouted. Lucci, what about you? Ace said to Lucci, would you like to get on my ship? Lucci, come on my boat. Luffy said coquettishly while pulling Lucci's hand. Lucci looked at Ace, then at Luffy, not knowing how to answer. Lucci. Luffy looked at Lucci with wide eyes. Lucci looked at Luffy's cute big eyes like a puppy and thought that I might be defeated. Well, I don't want to be a captain, so Ace and I might get on Luffy's ship. After all, there's no one watching this guy, and he might be eaten by fish on the first day at sea. Lucci smiled and rubbed Luffy's hair hard. I won't. Luffy protested loudly as he broke free from Lucci's hand. That's right, this guy is just a weak crybaby. Ace stuck out his tongue and made a face at Luffy. I'm not. Luffy yelled at Ace angrily. Lucci and Sabo looked at them in amusement. Let's talk about the future later. Maybe the four of us will go out to sea on our own. Ace said as he opened the wine he got from Dodin. You know what? After drinking this glass of wine, we can become brothers. Ace said with a smile as he picked up the wine in his hand and poured it into the 4 cups on the tree stump. Brother. Really? Now I have 3 brothers. Luffy excitedly picked up the wine glasses on the tree stump with Ace and the others. Lucci and Sabo happily picked up the cups. Maybe we weren't partners on the same ship when we became pirates, but the 4 of us are brothers. No matter where we are or what we do, this relationship will never be severed. Ace picked up the cup with a smile. Then from today on, we are brothers. The 4 boys raised their cups high and clinked them together. The 4 boys excitedly drank the wine in their hands. Ah, this wine tastes so bad. This is obviously not the taste that Shanks gave me. Luffy said with his tongue sticking out and his brows frowned. That drink Shanks gave you was a drink. Ace mocked Luffy. Chapter 18. On the first night of becoming brothers, at Dodin's house, Sabo thought a lot. He didn't often use the word brother, maybe never, and he certainly didn't expect that this word would be used on himself. He repeated in his mind, a small smile playing on his lips as he thought. His eyes flicked to the other 3 boys, all of whom had fallen asleep shortly after their baths, all sprawled out on their mats in similar positions, arms spread and mouths open, Luffy's hands resting on Luffy's body, and Luffy's feet resting on Ace's legs. Sabo had to fight the urge to laugh, watching Luffy still maintain his infectious smile even as he snored, while Ace's usually guarded face seemed to relax for once, and Luffy's usually calm face seemed to have fallen asleep with a smile on his face. Sabo shifted his gaze to his own mat, grateful to Dodon for providing him with one. Despite the burden they put on her, she gave them what they couldn't get themselves, and honestly, he found it amusing to watch her get turned on by their antics, just like sometimes teasing Luffy turned him on. It was cute. Ace, Luffy muttered, his smile widening in his sleep. Sabo was lying on the ground, looking at Luffy, his eyes bright. The boy's messy black hair looked fluffy because he had just washed it, one of his small hands, accidentally resting near Sabo's face because of the arrangement of the cushions. He couldn't help but stretch himself over and tentatively hold it. A family holds hands, right? Even if it's just for the sake of appearance, he has seen many nobles holding hands with their children or siblings before. He has never done it unless someone taught him, and the hands that held him since he was a child were always cold. What surprised him was how warm Luffy's hand was in his skin wasn't much different than a normal person's, though Sabo knew that if he poked a little harder the rubbery texture would be more noticeable. He held him, wanting to see what it felt like to hold the hand of a family member, not just any family member, but his brother. Brother, Sabo heard himself mutter, a pleased smile appearing on his lips. He is a big brother now, he has a little brother to take care of. His hands feel so small and fragile in his own. Luffy always lags behind them, desperately trying to catch up, and he insists that he is strong, but it is a more obvious choice for us to protect him. He and Ace and Lucci can stand side by side, with similar goals and methods, but Luffy is not strong enough, not to say he is weak. Sabo can see that he has power, but he needs time to get used to his power, his fruit. No, this feeling is different. It's not because he is not as strong as him that he protects him, but because he is his older brother, so he will protect Luffy, to protect his little brother, right? Maybe he has no experience in this matter, not like Lucci who has been Luffy's eldest brother for a long time, but he still wants to be a brother who can protect and raise his younger brother. He hopes that Luffy can seek guidance, comfort, protection from him, everything he once wanted as a lonely child living in Gout Town. He hopes to be able to give Luffy. The intensity of the emotion scared him a little. Their brotherhood hadn't brought any physical changes to them, they had been together long enough. His relationships with Ace and Lucci had strengthened. He had also managed to establish a relationship with Luffy. Had the brotherhood really changed anything? Sabo had already realized the answer, and it didn't change anything. It just gave him an excuse not to back down, an excuse to better express his love. Sabo rolled over and stared at the ceiling. He could hear Dodon snoring on the floor below and a group of bandits making all sorts of noises that meant they were asleep somewhere else in the extended family home. Ace and Lucci snored quietly, while Luffy continued to mumble the name of the food he wanted between his own snores, usually meat. The sounds were far more comforting than the eerie silence of Tall Town or the constant noise of Waste Terminal. He could sleep among this unusual family in his unusual new home. A sudden thought made him open his eyes. Luffy is their younger brother and they are his older brothers. Then what are he, Ace and Lucci to each other? Who is the older brother or younger brother to us? It was a strange thought. He didn't feel like a younger brother, nor did he feel as protective of Ace and Lucci as he did of Luffy. Of course they protected each other, but protecting a younger brother was different. The younger brother should be given priority. If Sabo or Lucci were also younger brothers, and if they were both in danger, and neither Sabo or Lucci could save themselves, what would Ace do? Would he back down? I know Lucci would definitely choose to save his younger brother first, but what about Ace? Would he have to decide which brother needed to be saved, instead of immediately choosing Luffy when in danger? Ace and Lucci are definitely not the kind of people who want someone to protect and nurture them. They would think it's spoiling. Ace would be angry and insist that he is fine, and when he thinks of Ace and Lucci, he only thinks of brothers, not older or younger brothers. But can a family have 3 older brothers and 1 younger brother? This might sound strange to others, but Sabo found that he didn't care. He would not talk about it with Ace and Lucci. He would let them bring it up first, so that he would make them admit that they were the same age. This morning he was friends with Sabo, Ace, and Luffy. Lucci had no family. This afternoon he was forced to admit that he had blood relatives that he wanted nothing to do with. He was afraid his friends would look at him differently or feel like he didn't belong because he didn't lose his parents like they did. For him now, forever he is the brother of Sabo, Ace, Luffy, and Lucci. Sabo, Luffy muttered again. Sabo turned his head to see Luffy's blanket halfway off, trying to find him in his sleep. A soft chuckle escaped from Sabo, and then Sabo reached for the blanket and wrapped it around Luffy again. The next morning, he and Ace ran ahead with the tubes as usual, with Lucci running behind Luffy, who was waving his arms happily, excited about the food as usual, though they hadn't decided what their prey would be yet. Although Sabo was pretty sure they would end up going for fish, since it was the easiest thing they could do. This meant that Luffy wouldn't be much help with that, and Sabo had to make sure to keep an eye on him to prevent him from trying. Food. Food. Luffy cheered, bursting into speed and catching up. In the past, Sabo, Ace, and Lucci had run side by side, and Luffy had tried to squeeze in between them, but since he couldn't keep up, he and Ace never bothered to make room. Now Sabo found himself moving a little bit, and he didn't notice that Ace was doing the same thing, and Luffy would quickly fit in there if needed. Lucci watched Ace and Sabo slowly move to the side to allow Luffy to fit between them better. He chuckled. It seemed that Luffy really had two little brothers again. Lucci quickened his pace and ran side by side with the other three brothers. Be patient, Luffy. Lucci chuckled. We have to hunt first. Sabo smiled happily at Luffy's enthusiasm. Yeah, but then we can eat. Luffy explained, waving his hands excitedly and almost hitting his head with the pipe in his hand. Hey, be careful. Ace complained, I think we're going to have fish for breakfast anyway, and you can't help with that. Chapter 19. I can. Luffy now turned to look at Ace, barely keeping up with their team. You just don't want to share the meat. I can catch my own fish, Ace retorted to Luffy, sticking out his tongue. Luffy's breathing became a little faster and he fell behind a little. I can do that too. He can try fishing, Sabo said, looking at Ace. If he doesn't catch anything after a while, he can also pick up some firewood to burn. He never sits still. Ace complained. If he falls into the water, he'll scare the fish away. It's okay, he just needs to stay away from the shore. He can also find some firewood or mushrooms nearby. Lucci said beside him. I won't fall in. Luffy insisted. I'll sit still. I'll show you. Yeah, you'll know it when you see it. Ace muttered. Sabo laughed off their exchange. Ace was probably right. Luffy couldn't sit in one place for a minute and would probably fall off or complain too much to grab anything that wasn't trying to grab him. Still, no matter how much they shared and took care of each other, they were all trying to get stronger and teach Luffy to take care of himself as they could. Ace and Sabo or Lucci could easily catch enough food for all of them. But Luffy needed to be able to contribute, and Sabo didn't want Luffy to feel like he couldn't help. It didn't take them long to reach the river. They put their cigarettes aside and used makeshift spears made from thick branches hammered with blades. Ace and Lucci immediately began hopping over the rocks in different directions to find a fish to spear, when Sabo stopped Luffy on the shore and offered him a fishing rod, a usable one they found from waste terminal. Sabo found an empty, relatively safe fishing spot for Luffy. I won't fall in, Sabo, Luffy assured Sabo with a bright smile. Okay, Sabo agreed with him, ruffling his hair. I'm going to go help Ace and the others, just be a good boy. Okay, Luffy nodded, his cheerful face full of determination. Sabo couldn't help but ruffle his hair again, grabbing his spear and jumping over the rocks to chase Ace. Once Sabo arrived, Ace complained, you know, he doesn't have to catch anything, we can catch enough fish for all of us. Didn't you insist on letting him catch his own food the last time we did this? Sabo asked. That was in the past. Now it can help as it pleases, but he really doesn't need to take risks here. Ace said hesitantly. You almost sound worried about Luffy. Sabo couldn't help but tease Ace, his eyes observing the water as he waited for the shadow of a fish, waiting for the right moment to strike. I'm not worried. Ace almost shouted, and all the shadows disappeared and the fish dived deeper. Ace, you just scared all the fish away. Sabo laughed. Anyway, he's on the shore and the current isn't very strong right now, so he should be fine. You guys are too worried. I heard you guys over there. Lucci came over with a smile and joked. Lucci looked back at Luffy and saw that Luffy's feet were standing firmly in place in an unbelievable posture. It's okay if you are worried, you know, I mean, he's our brother, I won't tell him that you are worried, Lucci said to Ace with a smile. Sabo chuckled beside him. Ace turned and walked deeper to find fish. Sabo could swear that he saw a blush on his freckled cheeks. Sabo saw Lucci pointing at Ace and smiling at him. It seems that someone else saw it too. Sabo chuckled and thought. There didn't seem to be any bigger fish around, and Lucci glanced at Sabo and Ace, who seemed to have the same problem. Luffy's voice came, "Ah! Sabo! Something is bitten." Luffy said happily while pulling the fishing rod. "Great, Luffy!" Sabo looked helplessly at the shadow of the fish in front of him, which disappeared in an instant. Wow! Sabo's eyes instantly returned to Luffy, and he realized that Luffy was having trouble pulling the fish up. Luffy's eyes widened, and he tried to back away, but the pole was stretching his hands, and if he didn't let go quickly or pull the fish up, he would be carried under the water by his hands when his hands retracted. Sabo realized that Luffy didn't have the strength to pull the fish up, and he worriedly shouted to Luffy, "Luffy! Let go!" "No!" Luffy stubbornly dug his feet into the ground and tried to pull back, but he only stretched his arms further. When Lucci realized what was happening, he hurried over to Luffy's direction. "Idiot!" Ace said harshly. He was already rushing towards Luffy. "Let go before you fall," and Ace had already rushed over the rocks. At the other end of the line, a fish surfaced at that moment, leaped and bit the fish holding the hook. "That's my fish!" Luffy yelled. "Don't eat the fish I caught, you stupid fish!" Then the line was pulled down, pulling Luffy off the ground. In the next moment, Luffy's arm retracted, launching him into the middle of the river towards the mouth of the aggressive big fish. Luffy did not let go of the fishing rod, but he screamed loudly, his eyes wide open, and his two legs kicked wildly in the air. Lucci jumped to a nearby rock, used the rock's power to jump up, raised the pipe in his hand and hit the big fish's head. "Sabo!" Ace yelled. Sabo didn't even have to think about what Ace wanted. At the sound of his name he lifted his weapon above the water and held it with both hands, supporting himself. Ace's weight made him lean forward a little, and Ace jumped onto Sabo's pipe, almost like they had planned. Sabo raised his weapon with all his strength, just as Ace was about to kick it, sending him high into the air, attacking the fish with Lucci and catching Luffy, and then all three fell into the water. Sabo threw his weapon to the shore and dived into the water to find Luffy or Lucci. "Ah!" Ace surfaced and cleared his throat with a cough. Ace looked at Luffy. He looked completely exhausted, his eyes a little blurry, and his little hands still holding the fishing rod. He was still conscious, which Ace thought was a good sign. "Are you both okay?" Sabo asked, leaning against a rock. Sabo held Luffy's weak arm with one hand and pulled the fish's fin with the other hand so that the fish would not float away, trying to use it to support Luffy. "Yes, we are fine." Ace first put Luffy on the belly of the fish, then took Lucci from Sabo's hand and put his hand on his shoulder, then he and Sabo stabilized Luffy and the fish while swimming towards the shore. When Ace got close to land he pushed Lucci to the shore and swam back to help Sabo. Ace pulled Luffy into his arms and swam to the shore, placing Luffy where they planned to have breakfast. Lucci met Sabo on the shore and helped pull the fish up. "Thank you," Sabo said to Lucci with a smile, then took off his jacket and shirt and wrung out the water. He took off his hat and prepared to put the wet clothes on the rocks to dry. Lucci took off his clothes and helped Luffy take off his wet shirt, wrung it out, and put them on the rock together. Ace said nothing, quickly took off his t-shirt, put it on the rock, and immediately went to collect firewood so that he could start a fire and grill the meat. "Luffy, are you okay?" After putting his clothes on the rock, Sabo immediately went to Luffy to check on him. "I'm fine." Luffy rubbed his eyes and wiped away his tears, then opened his eyes and said with excitement, "Sabo! I caught a big fish!" Chapter 20. Sabo stared at Luffy for a moment before he couldn't help but laugh. "Technically, Ace beat him, which made Luffy look frustrated, but if you hadn't lured it out, we wouldn't have caught such a big fish," Sabo added with a grin. This instantly made Luffy happy. Cheering excitedly, Luffy picked up his hat from the ground and plopped it on his head, pulling it down over his eyes. Sabo noticed that Luffy did this whenever he was excited or shy, and now it seemed like he was both, and Sabo couldn't help but hug Luffy hard. Luffy, who had always been full of energy, now seemed motionless in this hug, and Sabo wondered if he shouldn't be hugging him, but before he had time to think, Luffy hugged him back so hard that he almost threw him to the ground. "Luffy!" Sabo laughed and managed to steady himself. "What's wrong with you? You never hug me." Luffy smiled sheepishly. "I thought you didn't want to hug because that's what kids do, and we're not kids anymore." Well, but we are brothers, and brothers can hug each other. Sabo said with a smile. He. Okay. Luffy hugged Sabo tightly again, and Sabo hugged him back with a smile. Luffy, I'm going to help Ace, can you help watch the fish? Sabo said with a smile. Yeah. Luffy nodded happily, looking at the fish excitedly, while Sabo followed Ace with a smile. When Lucci came back, he saw Luffy looking at the fish intently. He walked up to Luffy and touched his hair with amusement. Luffy, how about helping me process the fish? Lucci said to Luffy with a smile. Lucci. Luffy looked at Lucci excitedly, then jumped into Lucci's arms and gave him a big hug. Lucci, I helped catch this fish. Luffy. Lucci steadied himself and luckily was not knocked to the ground by Luffy. Ha 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 ha. My Luffy is so awesome. Lucci hugged Luffy tightly. Luffy, let's go prepare the fish. When Ace and the others come back, we can grill it directly and we'll be able to eat it soon. Food. Food. Luffy shouted excitedly, watching Lucci excitedly as he processed the fish, and occasionally turning the fish over according to Lucci's instructions. Sabo called after Ace. Hey! Ace, wait a minute. What's the matter? If we don't start quickly, Luffy won't be able to wait and will want to eat it raw. Ace said impatiently. Sabo smiled softly at Ace's words. It won't take long, don't scold him about the fish then, okay? Don't you want to scold him? He shouldn't have pulled that fish up. Ace frowned at the thought, this is why I don't want him to help. Well, yes, Sabo agreed he should let go, but with the three of us there, we can protect him, he's not that dangerous, and he's happy that he caught us for breakfast. I know you're a little mad at him and want to yell at him, but why don't we just let him stay happy now? Ace sighed. What's wrong with you, Sabo? You're acting weird. I don't think I acted any differently. Sabo asked confused. You're not acting any different, you're just acting weird. Ace said, looking at Sabo. Why am I acting weird? Sabo asked with a frown. Ace rolled his eyes and handed some wood to Sabo, asking him to help hold it. No matter what, even if I scold Luffy, that guy will still be happy when he eats. Because he is proud of himself now and wants us to be proud of him, if you scold him, he will be in a bad mood, Sabo explained. So we should just forget about him doing something stupid and him not listening when we asked him to let it go, why? Sabo Ace asked as he glanced at Sabo as they walked back. Ace, he's our little brother now, Sabo explained with a smile and a shrug, we sometimes forget that. Okay, Ace sighed. Sabo was satisfied that Ace remembered his words, and he now wanted to return to Luffy as soon as possible. When they came back, they saw Lucci and Luffy waiting for them in front of the processed fish. Sabo. I protected our morning. Luffy proudly announced to Sabo. Well done Luffy. Sabo praised with a smile and then he went to the rock where the clothes were hung to dry with a grin to see how their clothes were doing. Sabo looked at the clothes which were still a little wet and planned to put them on after dinner. Lucci smiled gently as he watched the interaction between Sabo and Luffy, then walked over and took the firewood from Ace's hand to start a fire. After Ace handed the firewood to Lucci, he silently helped him start the fire. Hey! Luffy. Ace looked at Luffy drooling and ready to get the fish. Next time you encounter this situation, listen to us, okay? Okay. Luffy looked at Ace with a big smile. Ace quickly turned his head to the side, glaring at something. Lucci clearly saw a faint blush on Ace's cheek. Ace quickly cut off a quarter of the fish and threw it to Luffy. In Lucci's opinion, this was the best part. Lucci looked at Sabo curiously. Sabo smiled brightly at him, and then looked at Ace's actions with an even bigger smile. Hey! Sabo. Ace called Sabo softly in the dark. Sabo, who hadn't fallen asleep yet, responded to Ace in a low voice. Earlier today, I didn't think much of it, Ace said softly. What are you thinking about? Sabo turned and stared at Ace curiously. When you told me that Luffy is our little brother now, Ace kept his back to Sabo, I really didn't think about being a brother. So you were quiet after we exchanged sake, you really didn't think of that? Sabo looked at Ace with amusement. I don't think so. Ace scratched his hair. I never had a younger brother. I don't know how family and brothers get along with each other. Me neither, but everyone knows that older brothers protect their younger siblings, that's why they were born first, Sabo replied. Everyone knows about this. Ace's voice was filled with doubt. Why haven't I heard of this? You didn't observe much, but when we first met Lucci, we discovered that he had a younger brother. When he mentioned his brother at that time, he was full of protectiveness. Sabo said simply, and anyway, this is exactly what I thought. You don't have to feel the same way as I do, but we are a family now, so I decided to be the older brother I think I should be. What about me? Ace asked confused. You should do the same thing, figure out what kind of brother you want to be, and then do it, Sabo replied. I guess, maybe we're overthinking it, Luffy might not have thought about this, Ace said with a sigh. But after exchanging sake, it did change something, Sabo said thoughtfully. What do you mean? Ace turned to look at Sabo. I think the fact that we have a family that I chose, not one that I was forced to be a part of, makes me happy. Ace remained silent, but his expression was gentle, a kind of gentleness that few people could see. Good night, Ace, Sabo said to Ace after covering Luffy with the blanket. Good night, Sabo, Ace replied calmly, staring at the ceiling quietly for a moment with his eyes open before curling up and falling asleep. Chapter 21. Ace didn't know how long he had been sitting on his sleeping mat. Sabo's words kept echoing in his mind. He wondered when Sabo had thought of all that. In the beginning, when the three of them were acting together, Sabo was the one who really analyzed the situation and understood them. Lucci was the one who discussed and made battle plans with Sabo. Ace was the one who acted on his instincts, which was why their fighting styles complemented each other. Ace usually acts as a distraction with pure violence, Lucci supplements or ensures that the plan goes ahead, and if anything goes wrong, Sabo already has a backup plan or solution to their dilemma. It has been like this since the beginning of their partnership. If Ace thinks a lot, then does Sabo think even more? Despite his aloofness, Sabo was always the more receptive of the two, and recalling the day they met, Sabo had taken the initiative to talk to him, the first one to welcome him, even if it was for the benefit of both of them and not just out of the kindness of his own heart. At the time, Ace would not even have paid attention to him. He realized early on that unconditional love and trust were things only idiots would give, something he constantly expressed to Sabo. Neither of them had ever received unconditional love and trust, or given it, not even Lucci. It was impossible for either of them to put aside their past experiences, but they simply accepted it now and wanted to protect him, which was different. Ace knew that Sabo had never revealed his father's guilty conscience and only told them such things a few days ago. Ace thought that at that time Sabo would think that Ace, Luffy, and Lucci would be angry and betrayed by him, thinking that he was not an orphan like them, or they would criticize him because of his noble status. Luffy was too dumb to think like that. Lucci didn't overthink things, and Ace, he always overthink things, and it was kind of sad that it took Sabo so long to tell him. But at the same time, it's kind of comforting. It means Sabo is just like him, with similar insecurities. Sabo always looks so confident, so well educated, but he's still a kid like him. They're both kids, but Sabo always knows what to do with Luffy. He solves Luffy's problems like a real big brother. He hadn't really thought much about what the word little brother meant. They were already close and he felt like they were no different than they had been the day before, but the word gave him a strange feeling, although he couldn't quite explain how it was. Had it really changed that much to make them brothers? For Sabo, he always had a soft heart towards Luffy. Maybe this was more of an excuse for Sabo to stop backing down. If he hid behind the word little brother, he could justifiably argue with Ace about how much he doted on Luffy, just like letting Luffy skip a well-deserved scolding so that Luffy could feel accomplished over a stupid fish. Ace fell back onto his sleeping mat and sighed. Should he really change his behavior? He didn't know how to solve this problem by himself. He didn't know what a brother was, nor did he know how to be a brother. He had never paid attention to the interactions between other children, nor did he have time to observe how Lucci and Luffy got along with each other. Ace sighed again and covered his eyes with a hand. If he didn't fall asleep soon, he would be in a very grumpy mood tomorrow. Luffy's antics would irritate him more easily, and Sabo would disapprove if he snapped at Luffy for something like this. Ace didn't know when he finally fell asleep. He didn't seem to get enough sleep to cope with the new day. Suddenly something heavy jumped on him and then grabbed him tightly. Apparently, Luffy had decided that the best way to wake up his freckled brother was to throw himself at him, give him a big hug, and excitedly yell, "It's a good morning." "Ah! What are you doing?" Ace looked at the heavy object on his body, tried to push him away and complained. "Ace, wake up!" Luffy gave Ace a big smile, not realizing that Ace was trying to push him away. "Okay, I'm awake now, you can come down," Ace complained, covering his ribs that were hurt by Luffy's knee. "Why did you jump on me? You're too heavy." I want to give you a hug, Luffy shouted excitedly and hugged Ace tighter. Hey? I don't. Ace was about to say. Luffy, do you want to have breakfast? Sabo interrupted Ace. Food. Luffy let go of Sabo and gave Sabo a big hug instead. Sabo caught him and hugged him back. Lucci was already dressed. He took Luffy out of Sabo's arms and asked Sabo to put on his clothes. Lucci helped Luffy put on his shirt. They had to get ready as soon as possible. Dodden had heard Luffy's wake-up call. They had to rush out before Dodden asked them to do housework. Weird, Ace muttered, shaking his head as he put on his shoes. Let's go before Dodden notices us, Sabo said as he slammed Luffy's hat down on the little boy's head. Ace walked to the windowsill and peered out, observing Dodden's movements. If we time it right, he won't be able to catch us. Lucci nodded and said, I'll count to 3, and we'll charge together. Sabo and Luffy nodded. As soon as they counted to 0, all 4 boys jumped. Ace and Sabo. Lucci landed easily but Luffy screamed and messed up his landing, causing him to bounce. Dodden turned and lunged to try and catch him, but Luffy reached out very quickly and managed to grab Ace's hand. Feeling a slight pull, Ace jerked forward and pulled Luffy with his hand, freeing him from Dodden's lunge. Luffy chuckled as Luffy's arm suddenly regained its original shape, causing him to crash into Ace, causing him to stumble briefly, but Luffy quickly adjusted himself and kept up with his brother's pace. Well done! Sabo praised them and watched Dodden getting farther and farther away from them. Ace grinned, suddenly feeling completely awake. Let's go have breakfast, Lucci said with a smile. Does it still bother you? Sabo asked. Ace blinked and realized that Sabo was talking to him. Today was like usual, grabbing the morning and then fighting each other. Luffy still lost miserably, even though Lucci comforted him and Sabo encouraged him and praised his strength, while Ace just made fun of his devil fruit power. It was still a little early for dinner, but Luffy was already complaining about being hungry. Even though they had just finished lunch, they still hunted some game and grilled it before dinner. When did he fall asleep? Ace asked with a frown. Just now, I thought he could take a nap until we find something to bring to Dodden. Sabo said with a smile as he looked at Luffy who was sleeping soundly on Lucci's lap. I didn't notice. Ace shrugged and looked at the fire in front of him. Anyway, Ace, you're just trying to avoid my questions, Sabo said looking at Ace. So what? Chapter 22. Does that still bother you? I mean, who cares if I'm avoiding your questions? Sabo's smile fell, his blue eyes flashing with annoyance, so the answer is yes. Ace sighed and glared at his friend. It's not exactly bothering me, I'm just still wondering if it matters. Lucci watched the conversation between Sabo and Ace quietly. Nothing has changed, Ace recalled their conversation the night before. I think your word made us happy, but I guess it didn't make any difference to me. Your behavior has changed, Sabo shook his head. Nothing has changed, Ace snapped, glaring at Sabo. I'm not like you and Lucci, who dote on Luffy just because he's our little brother. If anyone asks, I can say that you 3 are my brothers, and that will never change. But that doesn't mean I'll act any differently than I did from the beginning. Ace, that's not true, Sabo said, taking off his hat. How do you know? I know you better than anyone, Sabo said, looking at Ace, and you don't have to worry about me telling Luffy about this, so why don't you admit it? Ace sighed in frustration and ran his hands through his hair. He hated this complicated feeling. Then explain to me why this matter is so confusing just because Luffy is our little brother. Lucci chuckled. Ace, this isn't confusing unless you try to deny him. Sabo smiled sympathetically and said, let me give you an example. When we were fighting Luffy today, did you hold back? Of course not. Why, what about you? Ace asked confusedly. Of course not, I mean we're still training just as hard as ever, and other than taking precautions against his reckless behavior, we haven't stopped him to keep him safe. Like that time by the river. Ace frowned. Yes, just like that time, because he couldn't swim, we didn't need him to help us catch fish, but in the forest, we still accepted his help in hunting, Sabo explained. So what's your point? Ace leaned forward and asked impatiently. Remember the incident with Borhami? Sabo asked. Ace was at a loss for words at the change of subject, and for a moment he didn't know how to respond. Yeah, so what? Right after that happened, we could talk about him without getting worked up or anything, Sabo continued, but think about it now. Ace frowned, then shrugged, thinking back on the incident. Do you know how angry you look right now? Sabo interrupted Ace's thoughts. What? Ace felt his mood change. You're wondering how hurt Luffy is? Sabo guessed. At the time, we just forgot about it because he recovered, and looking back now, we were more worried about the treasure than if someone was torturing our little brother. Looking back now, we were furious that someone was torturing our little brother. Before you try to deny it, don't forget that I'm with you, and we feel the same way about this matter. Ace frowned and looked away. Sabo smiled, albeit a little annoyed. Don't worry Ace, it's normal to feel this way, the only reason it bothers you is because we've never felt this way before. Ace, don't worry. This is the normal feeling of an older brother towards his younger brother. You will know after a while. Lucci understood something after listening to their conversation, so he patted Ace's shoulder and gave him affirmation. Ace was in a state of deep thought during Luffy's actions after he woke up. When he was sleeping at night, Luffy suddenly gave him a big hug. What the hell, Luffy? Ace complained. He. Good night, Ace. Luffy hugged him tightly again. Good night. Sabo. Luffy turned around and hugged Sabo with a smile. Good night, Luffy. Sabo hugged Luffy back before releasing him and letting him return to his blanket. Lucci fixed the blanket for Luffy, and Sabo approached Ace and explained to him, I told him he could hug us because we are a family now, just accept it. You what? Ace whispered. That's why he jumped on me this morning, isn't it? It makes him happy, Sabo retorted. It's just a hug. Now it made more sense, Ace thought to himself in frustration. He had never wasn't used to any kind of physical contact, and it was obvious that Luffy seemed to prefer physical contact. So every time Luffy hugged him he just tried to push him away, but now there seemed to be no reason to push him away, and to be honest Luffy didn't seem to know how to tell the difference between if he was giving a hug or trying to take down a beast, but it wasn't like he really minded the hug Luffy had just given him. Ace suddenly thought of what Sabo had said today. Ace hated having to admit that Sabo was right, but there was no point in denying it. Talking about the incident with Luffy and Borhami more or less solidified Sabo's point of view. Before they exchanged sake, he would of course be angry if someone hurt one of them, regardless they have come this far as friends. Now, was that what Sabo meant by the mere reminder of Luffy's injury when he could have avoided it being enough to make him angry? The changes they had undergone, it was strange that the anger within him was tied to his protective instinct, which was different from the anger he had when he mentioned Roger to others. When it came to Roger, the anger was a way for him to vent his frustration with the person who made him live such a cursed life, and hatred and self-loathing would dominate his thoughts. It felt different when his brothers were involved, when his anger was on their behalf rather than when he was angry at himself. Ace, Sabo, Luffy, it's great to have you as my big brothers, Luffy muttered softly into the mat. Ace turned to look at Luffy. He clearly felt the weight of the words, his cheeks began to turn red. It was a simple statement but it filled him with warmth. Ace looked at the mess of black hair, he could feel the smile on his face and the relaxation in his body. In the forest when they finished breakfast, they decided on the goal for today. Since they had done a lot of training recently, when they were about to count, they found that the soil usually used for counting had been smeared too badly and could no longer be counted. Sabo thought we should go to the waste terminal to find some chalk and some boards. The four brothers were at the waste terminal, searching around for some chalk and a suitable board. Hey! Ace, there are some wooden boards stuck underneath. They should be able to be used. Sabo called Ace to look at some wooden boards stuck under a pile of garbage. We should move that garbage away, Ace said. I can take it out. Luffy volunteered and raised his hand. All right, Luffy, let's first. Lucci didn't even finish his sentence when he saw a pair of outstretched hands reaching down, pulling hard at the planks, pulling them back violently, and the huge pile of garbage on top of them suddenly all fell down because there was nothing to support them. Be careful. Lucci was startled when he saw the garbage pile suddenly collapse, and hurriedly pulled Luffy beside him to jump away. The four of them barely avoided being buried in the garbage. Boom! Idiot! Who told you to just pull it? Ace angrily punched Luffy's rubber head. Luffy squatted on the ground with tears in his eyes and his head in his hands. This is faster. Luffy retorted. Stupid Luffy! This is very dangerous, we will be buried under the garbage dump. Lucci said viciously while pressing Luffy's head. Okay, Luffy, just listen to us next time, okay? Sabo said as they pulled apart. Okay. Luffy agreed with a pout. Luffy, can you just help us collect chalk nearby? Sabo said to Luffy with a smile. Oh. Luffy wrinkled his nose and searched around until he saw some chalk. He picked up the chalk and put it in his pocket when he remembered that one of his pockets was torn and he needed something to hold the chalk. He looked at his brothers, Lucci, Ace, and Sabo, who were still digging at the plank, trying to rescue him. They told him not to go too far, but it was not like he couldn't take care of himself. He looked around and saw some small baskets or round pieces of trash near the city wall that he could use to hold the chalk so that he wouldn't have to fill his hands with chalk. Besides, they are always fighting the thugs in the city and the pirates in the bay, so we can handle everything, Luffy thought as he walked towards the city wall. He saw the small basket that he noticed at first. He picked it up and was disappointed to find that it was torn. Suddenly his attention was attracted by a shiny object closer to the wall. He put the chalk in his hand into the small basket and went there to check. When he saw it was a pair of broken glasses, his little shoulders slumped in disappointment, and he wished it was treasure or something valuable so he could give it to his brothers to make up for the mess he had just made. Hey, kid! Chapter 23. Luffy looked up and saw a group of thugs approaching. They looked like adults. What do you want to do? Luffy looked at them without any fear. He didn't notice that the thugs more or less surrounded him, nor did he see that one of them pulled out a knife. I didn't see your other brothers today, said one of the thugs holding a knife with an evil smile. Luffy frowned involuntarily and was about to grab the pipe on his back. My brothers are here, but I don't need them to defeat you, he said loudly. He didn't like the man who was talking to him. He had dirty blonde hair, but the scowl and smugness on his face twisted into something that always seemed to annoy him. The little devil is just a big talker. The man snapped and nodded to his companion. Catch him. Luffy barely noticed that the other three had their weapons drawn as the one in front of him took a swing with his knife, which he managed to dodge, but he nearly hit his hat, which made him frown. He didn't have time to reach for his pipe, so he drew his hand back and balled it into a fist, but he didn't get a chance to try and throw a punch before the other thug punched him in the face. The punch itself didn't hurt, but some of the sharp objects in his hands dug into his rubber skin, causing him to almost bleed. With a growl, Luffy quickly jumped up and got into a fighting stance. He knew he had more than enough strength to fight, but in a 4-on-1 situation, he was worried his brothers would get mad if he tried to do it alone. They always seemed to think he would mess up without them. Besides, they were still mad about the board just now, so he didn't want to make them angrier by worrying them or depriving them of the chance to fight. They could each take on one thug. That was fair, right? Lucci. Ace. Sabo. He shouted. Lucci looked at the board in his hand, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and turned to look at Ace and Sabo, who were still digging the remaining boards. Lucci looked around and found that he didn't see the other little boy, and he couldn't help but panic. Ace. Sabo. Have you seen Luffy? Lucci shouted to them in panic. Ace and Sabo instantly looked at Lucci, turned around and looked around, then hurried out of the garbage dump. Lucci. Ace. Sabo. Suddenly a loud shout was heard. It's Luffy! Lucci, Ace, and Sabo looked at each other and shouted, then rushed towards the direction of the sound. You little brat! The man with dirty blonde hair quickly grabbed at Luffy, but Luffy dodged it easily and jumped up, taking out his pipe and placing it in front of him. The other three thugs froze when they heard the names, and sure enough, seconds later, they were busy fending off the three very angry brothers. Luffy didn't waste any time, launching himself with the gum fruit and swinging his pipe at the thug. The thug didn't expect Luffy to attack so quickly and dodged, but that was the only time. After that, Luffy dodged attacks and kept an eye on his brother's position. His pipe was knocked out at some point, and the other's knife was knocked out as well, and now both of them were weaponless. Regardless, he was more used to punching, and he stretched his arm back as far as he could and punched the thug. His target was closer than normal, but he caught his hand and threw his fist somewhere else. Wow! Luffy stumbled, his arms darting out towards Ace, who he vaguely registered shouting something angrily in his direction. Lucci noticed that Luffy was in trouble, and Ace's opponent grabbed Luffy's wrist. Luffy felt his body being tugged and he cried out again, flying through the air towards the man who had grabbed him. Ace's opponent didn't seem to notice this though, and his eyes widened when Luffy collided with him in the face. Luffy rolled over from the impact, with enough force to knock both men to the ground, causing Luffy to land on the man's chest with a thud, knocking the man unconscious. As he sat up, his hands snapped back into place, and Luffy looked around in confusion. Everyone seemed to stop and watch what Luffy was doing. Oh! Luffy grinned and shouted at them, Ace, Lucci and Sabo. I knocked one down. He excitedly raised his hands above his head to show his victory. You idiot! Ace groaned, slapping a hand across his face. Well, you did knock him out, Lucci said with a smile, covering his face. So now there's only one left, Sabo grinned, turning his attention to the man with the dirty blonde hair. Luffy, stop messing around and come here. Ace ordered, as Luffy was still sitting on the fallen thug. Luffy chuckled, jumped up, and began to sprint in Ace's direction. Luffy, be careful! Sabo's sudden shout caught his attention, but not fast enough. The man with dirty blonde hair suddenly rushed out, grabbed Luffy's shirt, and before anyone could stop him, he punched Luffy in the face. Normally, Luffy would just stumble up and continue fighting after being punched to the ground, but this time it seemed different. Lucci seemed to catch a glimpse of Luffy's cheek bleeding heavily. Lucci and Ace instantly rushed forward and attacked the thugs, attacking Luffy viciously with their pipes. Sabo yelled at Ace and Lucci to stop. Luffy, are you okay? Sabo asked worriedly. Yes, that punch hurt. Why did it hurt? Luffy replied, covering his mouth. That bastard was wearing spiked gloves. Ace spat, walking over with his arms crossed over his chest, looking very angry. Luffy, let me see. Lucci knelt in front of Luffy, trying to take his hands away to see his injuries. Luffy shook his head, not wanting to remove his hand. It's okay, Luffy, let your brother take a look, Lucci asked again. Luffy hesitated. Hey, Luffy, take your hands away, we need to see your injuries, Sabo said softly to Luffy. Luffy, take your hand away. Ace said sternly. Luffy flinched at the tone, then finally dropped his hands at Sabo's urging. Why on earth is he bleeding so much? Ace yelled. Ace, shut up for a second. Sabo said impatiently, while carefully helping Lucci to lift Luffy's head slightly to help him check Luffy's mouth. The gums are a little cut, and the lips too, but everything seems to be fine. But it will hurt, right? Lucci looked at Luffy worriedly. Luffy opened his mouth to answer yes, but seeing that Ace seemed angry, he quickly wiped his tears and sucked his bottom lip. It doesn't hurt at all. Chapter 24. Let's pack up and go back. Lucci looked at Luffy in confusion but said nothing. Luffy went back to looking at the small basket where he kept his chalk and noticed that he had blood on his hands. He didn't want to get blood on the chalk. He wiped the blood on his hands on his pants and was about to put one hand over his mouth to prevent more blood from coming out. He bent down and was about to hold up the basket with his other hand when suddenly a hand took his basket up. Lucci. Hey! Let's go, Luffy! Lucci handed the basket to Luffy, then squatted down, facing his back to Luffy, and motioned him to lie on his shoulders. Oh! Luffy climbed onto Lucci's back. Lucci quickly returned to his brothers with Luffy on his back, and they took the few wooden planks they dug out and started heading to their training grounds. Sabo put the things down at the training grounds and took Luffy to where they kept the bandages and medicines. Oh! Luffy, bear with it for a while, okay? Sabo sighed, watching Luffy trying to fiddle with his bandages. I'm hungry, Luffy said, trying to move his bandages. It's not time to eat yet, Luffy, so you have to wait a little longer, Luffy said with a smile. But I'm hungry and my mouth tastes of blood, it's disgusting. Luffy protested. Well, stop complaining, it's your fault for getting hit by accident. Ace snapped from the rock he was sitting on. He had been very grumpy since he came back from Waste Terminal. Ace. Sabo looked at him and tried to stop him, but Luffy frowned. I only got hit once. Luffy insisted, jumping up to face Ace. More than once, but only once did I really hurt you, Lucci said. You shouldn't have attacked those assholes, Ace continued, glaring at Luffy. The only sensible thing you did all day was yell for us to help you. Ace. Lucci stopped him from the side. I'm not asking you to help me. Luffy protested, stamping one of his feet. I'm letting you know that I want to fight. We all have someone who can fight. Guys, Sabo started, but Ace wasn't listening to him. Well, if you weren't an idiot, you would have yelled for help sooner than you did. I didn't even intend to yell in the first place. I could have handled it. Luffy yelled. Idiot, Ace muttered again. Ace. Luffy interrupted Sabo. This time you're going too far. He stomped his feet and yelled again. I yelled so you wouldn't get mad at me, but you still got mad at me. Luffy. Lucci looked at Luffy, not knowing what to say. Ace and Sabo stopped completely when they heard Luffy's words. What? Ace asked confusedly. You yelled so that I wouldn't get mad at you, what does that mean? You're already mad at me for messing up your board, I know you'd be even angrier if I didn't let you fight, Luffy explained, some of his anger leaving him, his shoulders slumping. I don't want you to worry about me messing up during a fight and then get even angrier at me. Ace jumped down from the rock and walked over to Luffy, ruffling his hair. Idiot, I'm not mad at you for messing with us or helping us fight, even if it was just luck, you did take one of them out. Besides, we got the boards we needed, and you found us enough chalk, so there's no need to get mad about it, Sabo said with a smile. With these words, although Luffy didn't quite understand, he realized that they were no longer angry, and he grinned. I'm cool, right? He asked excitedly. Yes, Luffy, you are awesome, Lucci smiled and stroked his head. Don't push your luck, Ace pushed him. Let's go get something to eat, Luffy said excitedly as he put on his hat. Hey, is food all you can think about? Sabo smiled and shook his head. Only when I'm hungry, Luffy replied. Lucci smiled and shook his head, and Ace rolled his eyes. Lucci watched Ace and Sabo leave as they were preparing some firewood for the meat they were going to grill that evening. Lucci looked at the dinner in front of him and thought about what happened this afternoon. Luffy, how do you feel? Lucci asked, staring at the bandage on Luffy's cheek. It still stings a little, and I don't like the taste in my mouth, Luffy replied, fiddling with the bandages. Luffy, I want you to know that Ace, Sabo, and I will never be mad at you. No matter what you do, you will always be my brother, and I will never be mad at you for anything, Lucci said to Luffy with a smile. Hey! Why? Luffy asked in confusion. Ace and Sabo are angry today, not because of what you did. We won't be angry because you did something stupid or messed up. The reason they were angry this afternoon is because someone hurt you. We want to protect you. We will be angry at anyone who tries to hurt you. Lucci looked at Luffy and said seriously. Just like when those bandits tried to hurt me, Shanks angrily threatened that stupid bandit. Luffy asked confused. Yes, Ace and Sabo are your brothers now, and you are their younger brother, so they, like me, want to protect you and will be angry at anyone who wants to hurt you. We don't want you to get hurt, just like you don't want anyone to hurt your brother. Lucci smiled and ruffled Luffy's black hair. Luffy thought about what Lucci said and looked up at him happily. Brother, I will become stronger so you don't have to worry about me. If someone tries to hurt you, I can protect you. I also want you to be as safe and happy as me. Luffy said firmly. Ha ha ha. I'm waiting for Luffy. I believe you will become very strong in the future, but for now, let your brothers protect you. Lucci grinned and couldn't help but hug Luffy tightly. Luffy happily hugged Lucci back, he. I can protect you guys now too. Ace. You could have killed that guy earlier today. Does it matter? That guy pissed me off. Next time, be more decisive, especially when Luffy is injured. Sabo stopped and looked at Ace. I'm serious, Ace. Today it was just a cut, but if Luffy is hurt more seriously, you'll be wasting our time if you continue to attack. You don't have to stay and fight, Lucci is here too. If Luffy gets hurt, you and Lucci can go somewhere else to save him. Ace. Okay. I get it, I was just a little irritated today, Luffy wasn't seriously injured, okay? I'll notice next time. I just saw the blood on his hands and felt worse than it actually was, Ace sighed. I don't believe he thinks we're mad at him for that, Ace said helplessly. He didn't understand the idea that we were crazy about him. We never did that before. If he got hit in a fight, we used to act indifferent or blame him for it. Yeah, well, no one should fight Luffy except us, Ace muttered. Yeah, Ace, next time someone hurts Luffy, let me beat him up, Sabo grinned. Okay. You go fight next time. Now we should take back the firewood we collected. Luffy can't wait to eat raw meat. Ace said with a smile. Chapter 25. The way up the mountain was difficult, although not as dangerous as most people thought. Makina looked at the path ahead. She adjusted the basket on her arm, which did not help her much in terms of weight. It had been a long time since she had taken a long walk like this, but she couldn't wait for Luffy and Lucci to return to the village on their own. She missed them and she was worried about them. Next to her, the village chief muttered angrily, "Bandit! What on earth was Garp thinking? I'm sure they're not all bad people." After all, his methods may be harsh, but he loves his grandson, Makina said soothingly. Bandits! They're no better than pirates! The village chief shouted loudly. Makina smiled and shook her head. She noticed a house in the open space ahead, and her eyes fell on a group of people sitting near a tree not far away. One of the women was tall and excited, with her bright orange hair pulled back in a large bunch of curls. Shut up! Dodden slammed his fist to the ground. I can't take care of them anymore. Let's kick them out. Dodden said excitedly. But Mr. Cap. The other two bandits tried to comfort her. I don't care about the agreement with Garp. Dodden shouted excitedly. Hey! The village chief stepped forward to talk. Unexpectedly, the woman in front of him suddenly turned around and threw herself on the ground, shouting, Sorry! Sorry! I was just impulsive just now. Excuse me, I heard that Luffy and the others are living here now. Makina stepped forward and asked. Makina. Hi. Makina. Lucci greeted Makina from behind Luffy and gave her a hug. Makina turned around and saw Luffy holding her waist tightly and smiling at her. Makina felt relieved when she saw the bright smile on his face. In fact, his smile was brighter than the last time she saw him. Except for the fact that he was wearing a shirt that was obviously too big for him, he looked very good. Makina looked at Luffy standing in front of her. He looked much older, but he smiled a lot more than the last time she saw him, and he was more lively at his age. You look good. The village chief grinned at the two young men in front of him. It's been a few months, so we were worried and decided to check in to see how you were doing. Village chief. Luffy turned his bright eyes to the village chief, but still held on to Makina. Hi. Village chief. Lucci looked at the village chief. The old man won't let us go back to the village. Does the old man know that you are coming here? He doesn't seem to let us see you. Makina smiled, then put a finger to her lips, winked and said to Luffy, Don't tell Mr. Garp about this. Okay, that's what Dodden always says anyway, Luffy chirped. Hey, Luffy, I have a gift for you. Makina said to Luffy with a smile. Gift? Luffy became excited. Mr. Cap shouldn't have noticed this. Makina squatted down and opened the basket she brought. Luffy looked at the basket on the ground curiously, wondering what was inside, and he saw her pulling out a shirt. Today. New clothes. Makina picked up a simple t-shirt with a star pattern printed on it and showed it to Luffy. Wow! New clothes! Luffy raised his hands and cheered. Makina held the clothes in front of Luffy to see if they fit. Makina saw two boys standing at the door of the house and she called them over. Come here too, you should be about the same age as Lucci. I have some new clothes that will suit you, Makina said as he took out a new t-shirt and gestured to them. Lucci watched Ace and Sabo's reactions with amusement. He introduced them to Makina. Makina, this is Ace, that is Sabo, they are my brothers. Our brothers. Luffy interrupted Lucci and said excitedly to Makina. I see. I'm very happy to hear that news. I was worried that you two would be lonely, Makina said with a warm smile. Now, we will never be alone again. Luffy told Makina seriously. Makina felt a warm current in her heart, and her heart softened instantly. She could see that the boy who had just acted indifferent blushed when he heard Luffy's words. Nice to meet you, I'm Makina. Makina looked at the two boys with a smile. Nice to meet you, Sabo said politely, taking off his hat subconsciously and smiling. Ace blushed and crossed his arms over his chest, humming in response to the introduction. Lucci, Sabo, and Luffy sat together. Lucci pointed at Ace who was being tried on by Makina and said with a smile, Ace is shy. Oh. Ace is blushing. Sabo pointed at Ace and laughed. He. Ace is shy. Luffy held his stomach and laughed at Ace. I didn't. You guys. Ace looked at the smiling brothers angrily. Don't move. Makina said to Ace. You'll be in trouble later. Ace shouted angrily with a red face. Ha 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 ha. Lucci, Sabo, and Luffy sat on the ground, holding their stomachs and laughing. It would be great if it suits your taste. Makina said to everyone while looking at the table full of food. Delicious. Makina's cooking skills are still great. Luffy and Lucci ate the food in front of them with big mouthfuls. As expected, sailing is inseparable from delicious food. When I go out to sea, I must first find a chef with the best skills to be my partner. Sabo said while eating. I will become a pirate first, so your plan will never come true. Ace said while eating a piece of meat. Then Luffy must be the one who finds the best chef in the world first. Ordinary chefs can't satisfy him. Luffy argued with Ace and the others while chewing on the meat in his hand. I will definitely be the first to become a pirate. Luffy shouted. Suddenly, the bandits stared at the four brothers in horror, and Garp suddenly appeared and punched the four brothers in the head. It's Ace and Luffy, Lucci's grandfather. Sabo stared at Garp in surprise. Kid, you just said you wanted to go out to sea or something. Garp said to Sabo with a gloomy face. Sabo was so scared that he took a step back. Sabo is not a brat. He is our brother now. We will become great pirates in the future. Luffy said loudly while standing in front of Sabo. So I have one more kid to teach a lesson to. Garp rubbed his hands with a grim smile. Run! Lucci, Ace, Luffy, and Sabo ran quickly towards the forest. Don't even think about escaping, little brats. Garp laughed and caught up with the four brothers. Ah! There was a huge noise in the forest, and countless trees were broken by Garp's iron fist. That's great, Luffy and Lucci have made two good brothers. Makina said with a smile as he watched the noise coming from the forest behind him. Ah! Lucci, Luffy, Ace, and Sabo kept running away, but they still couldn't escape Garp's iron fist. Don't try to escape. This old man is a monster. Sabo thought in horror. The four brothers had huge bumps on their heads, lying on the ground, not knowing whether they were dead or alive. If we continue like this, we will definitely be killed by the old man tomorrow. Ace said to Garp who was sleeping behind the door. Even if we're lucky enough to survive, the result will be the same as long as we don't give up on becoming pirates. Sabo said seriously. I don't want to die. Luffy said in horror, holding his head. There is only one way. It's time to make up your mind, brothers. Ace said to his brothers. Let's escape. Lucci said firmly. Chapter 26. The next morning, after waking up, Dodden rubbed his eyes and looked at the note in shock. We want independence. What should we do? Dodden unfolded the note and showed it to Garp worriedly. Smart ass, Garp said nonchalantly. What are you talking about? Their notoriety has spread to the central street. If they hadn't hidden among us bandits, it would have been no surprise that someone would target them at any time. Dodden said worriedly. The vacation is over. We must train them into excellent Navy officers. Garp walked down the mountain. Throw the burden to me again. Dodden shouted angrily from behind. What? Goodbye. Dodden said goodbye to Garp with a smile. After he could no longer see Garp's back, Dodden immediately dropped the things in his hands and shouted angrily, how can bandits train the Navy? This old man is too chaotic. Well, forget it, boss. But no matter what, you are actually very worried about those children. Said one of the bandits with a smile. What does it have to do with me? Think about it carefully, this is just right. Just leave here by yourself. Dodden kicked away the talking bandit and said while lying on the ground. Look at this. Sabo took out a blueprint and placed it on the tree stump. What is this? Lucci looked at the drawing. The blueprints of our base. We can't always live in the wild. So we have to build our own secret base here. Sabo said excitedly. Secret base. So cool. Luffy shouted excitedly. What should we do with the materials? Ace said on the side. We can go to Waste End to find what we need. Lucci said excitedly. That's right, we can have as much of this stuff as we want. Sabo grinned. After 3 weeks of continuous efforts, the four brothers finally successfully built the secret base. Wow! It's exactly the same as the design drawing. Luffy looked at the treehouse excitedly. Even I think it's good. Sabo said proudly. Sabo! It's your turn, don't let him get away. Leave it to me, don't even think about running away. Okay, we've cornered him. Ace, Sabo, and Lucci chased a little bear and forced him to the bottom of a cliff. Luffy! We'll be at your place soon. Lucci shouted to Luffy who was standing on the cliff with a smile. Here I come, here I come. Luffy held his pipe and waited excitedly for the little bear to come over. Lucci, Ace, and Sabo blocked the bear's way in all directions with pipes. Luffy jumped down from the cliff and hit the bear's head from above with the pipe, successfully knocking the bear down. Great! I caught it! Luffy raised his pipe excitedly to show his victory. Well done! Luffy! Lucci shouted with a smile. Great, Luffy! Sabo praised with a grin. You can eat as much bear meat as you want today. Ace said with a smile. Great, great, I succeeded in my first hunt alone. Luffy jumped around the bear excitedly. Wait a minute, look at that. Lucci looked towards the cliff in shock. There was a big tiger standing on the cliff, staring at the little bear that was knocked down on the ground. Luffy, be careful behind you! Sabo shouted to Luffy. The tiger stood on the cliff and seemed ready to jump down. Damn it! Did he come here following the scent of prey? Ace stared at him nervously. Tiger! Luffy took a step back in fear. Luffy, get out of the way! His target is bear! Lucci shouted to Luffy. I defeated him, I don't want to hand him over to a guy like you. Luffy shouted at the tiger, trying to attack it with the pipe in his hand. The opponent is too difficult to deal with, run! Sabo said to Luffy nervously. No! Get away, bastard! If you don't get out of here, I'll beat you away! Luffy shouted loudly at the tiger. Ace, Lucci and Sabo watched in horror as Luffy was slapped away by the tiger, and they quickly ran in Luffy's direction. Luffy! That idiot! Ace watched in shock as Luffy refused to move away and kept trying to attack the tiger. Bastard! Luffy stretched out his arms and used the rubber fruit to attack the tiger, then was knocked away again. Let's run while its attention is distracted by the prey. Sabo, Lucci and Ace rushed towards Luffy, picked him up and ran away quickly. Remember this! Luffy shouted to the tiger behind him. Damn it! Luffy muttered angrily on the way back to the treehouse. It's a shame that this is Luffy's first catch. Sabo said regretfully. Forget it, our opponent is that big tiger, there's nothing we can do. Ace said helplessly. But, that's the food I caught. How dare you take other people's things? Luffy said angrily. Luffy, don't be angry, we will avenge you tomorrow. Luffy comforted. Ah! We can prepare the trap tomorrow, and then we can lure it out with food, and then the four of us can definitely defeat him together. Sabo said. Here it comes. Lucci stared at the tiger coming out of the cave. I'll go first. Ace jumped up to avoid the tiger's claws, then ran towards him along the tiger's claws and hit the tiger's head hard with the pipe, but the moment Ace fell, he was hit hard to the ground by the tiger's tail. Lucci saw the tiger preparing to attack Ace again, and quickly ran towards Ace, jumped up and prepared to hit the tiger's eyes with his pipe, but was slapped aside by the tiger's claws when he was about to get close. Then Sabo put a rope around the tiger's neck and pulled it, and Luffy stretched out his arms with the rubber fruit, and accidentally hit the tiger's eyes. The tiger's attention was instantly attracted by Luffy, and he tore off Sabo's rope and rushed directly to Luffy, preparing to hit Luffy with his tiger paw. Luffy! Ace, Lucci and Sabo shouted in horror and rushed towards Luffy quickly. At the critical moment, Ace, Sabo and Lucci ran to Luffy and held up the tiger's paw. Luffy, are you okay? We need to retreat first. Ace, Lucci and Sabo said to Luffy, who was sitting on the ground while holding up the tiger's paw. Ace, Sabo, Luffy, we have to make a plan and defeat it together. What should we do? Ace looked at Lucci and said. Sabo, Lucci, get ready, he's about to come out. Ace said, staring at the tiger that was about to come out. Oh! Sabo stepped forward first to provoke the tiger. Come here, stupid tiger. Sabo was chased by the tiger and ran towards Lucci's direction. Lucci, get ready, he's coming. Leave it to me. As he said that, Lucci jumped over and hit the tiger's head with his pipe to attract its attention. Luffy, stretch your arms as wide as possible, and when I tell you to release them, you'll push me out, Ace said to Luffy behind him. Oh! Luffy nodded excitedly. Ace thought of the plan Luffy had mentioned and clenched the pipe in his hand. Ace, you have the most strength. Sabo and I will lure the tiger to this position. Then, Ace, you will use the elastic force of Luffy's rubber fruit to jump onto the tiger's head and hit its eyes with the pipe. Ace! Are you ready? It's coming! Lucci shouted to Ace. Luffy! Ace yelled. Rubber, rubber! Hearing the sound, Luffy let go instantly and used his ability to bounce Ace up. Ace used Luffy's strength to charge at the tiger. Die! Rocket! Chapter 27. Great! We defeated the tiger! Luffy said excitedly. Great! Should we eat him? Lucci said with a smile. We'll keep it as our training target. Now it will take the combined efforts of 4 of us to defeat it. When each of us can defeat it on our own, we'll eat it. Ace grinned. Okay, this way we can train to become stronger. Sabo said with a smile. But I'm hungry. Luffy said, touching his stomach. Let's go eat delicious ramen. Ace grinned. In this way, Lucci, Ace, Sabo, and Luffy spend their days fighting with the beasts in the jungle, the thugs in the waste terminal, and the pirates in the bay, and they become stronger and stronger. They would often be around the outskirts, stealing from the thugs who tried to attack them or going into town and looking for some restaurants to go into, but due to their reputation, they can no longer attack restaurants the way they did before. After they had collected enough treasure for the day, Sabo decided it was time for us to leave. Sabo and Lucci walked in front, Luffy followed behind, and when Ace was about to catch up, the mocking voice coming from the tavern made his whole body still. His hands clenched the purse on his body. For a moment, he thought he was imagining it, but when they walked past the shabby tavern, the hoarse laughter coming from inside told him that it was not an imagination. Ace! Luffy turned around and looked at him in confusion. Ace seemed not to hear Luffy's voice. In his ears, there was only the vicious mocking voice coming from the tavern. Ace, what's wrong? Lucci looked at Ace's gloomy face in silence and found that his eyes were filled with a lot of darkness. Ace! Sabo's voice became smaller and smaller. He had realized what was happening. He went over and quickly grabbed Luffy's wrist. Luffy, let's go. But Sabo, Ace. Luffy looked at Ace. Ace is coming with us, right? Sabo asked in a serious voice. Ace looked at Sabo with flickering eyes. In the past, whenever they overheard someone saying bad things about Roger, Sabo and Lucci had never been able to convince him to let it go and leave. Ace always started a fight, asking those people what they would think if the person they hated had a child, but the answer always made him angry. Even now, he wanted to go in and question those people, accuse them of hating him without knowing him, even if they had no idea, but that's what they were doing now, and even if they knew, it wouldn't change their tune, it would just give them a new target and an outlet for their hatred. But this time Sabo didn't try to convince him otherwise, with a look and a nod Sabo clearly indicated to him that his little brother was watching him. Luffy stared at Ace with wide, uncertain eyes, and one of his little hands nervously grasped his hand. At that moment, Ace saw his reflection in Luffy's eyes, and his heart seemed to stop beating. His little brother probably couldn't understand what made his brother become like that. Even when he was at his worst, he never looked at him with such dark and hateful eyes. He felt sick at the thought of Luffy seeing him like this. He closed his eyes to block out the taunting voices in the bar, then turned his gaze back to Luffy. He didn't know what to think when he noticed that Luffy didn't look at him in fear or back off. When they first met, even when he tried to shake him off or glared at him fiercely while claiming that he wanted nothing to do with him, Luffy always just ignored him and continued to follow him like it was okay, and it seemed that this time would be no different. Even after seeing something so horrible, he seemed to be the same as before. Ace! Luffy tried again, squeezing his hand even tighter. He felt the warmth of his palms, which seemed to produce a warmth that seeped into Ace's body, seeming to drive away all the anger and malicious voices. Let's go! Ace whispered. Just this once, Ace thought. He resisted the urge to deny his need for contact, and he shook it back, holding Luffy's hand to show that he didn't mind or want Luffy to let go. Luffy responded with a smile full of sunshine. They returned to their home, Luffy's stomach making loud noises. Ace sighed. Sabo, why don't you go with Luffy and put our treasure in its hiding spot while Lucci and I go find our dinner? Ace, Lucci will help me find dinner, and Luffy can help you put the treasure away, Sabo said firmly. I'll help Sabo, Lucci agreed. Then Ace and I will go together, Luffy said with a smile. Ace opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again and sighed. As much as he wanted to go out and vent his frustration as violently as possible, he couldn't deny that he wanted Luffy to stay by his side and not slip into that familiar darkness he had felt earlier. Okay, Ace agreed. Ace? Luffy asked after Lucci and Sabo walked away. Are you okay? Ace hesitated, wanting to tell Luffy that he was an idiot and that there was no need to worry, but he found that he just couldn't do it, especially after he had given his little brother such a cold and scary look when he was in town. I feel better now, he admitted, leading Luffy towards the forest. After they put the treasure in the hiding place, when they returned to the treehouse, Sabo and Luffy had not returned yet, but Ace was not worried. He knew that Sabo might want to leave them some alone time, so he would tell Luffy the truth because Luffy was the only one who didn't know. Ace? You were really angry before, Luffy said. Sorry, Ace sighed and looked away, but... You look really depressed, Luffy continued, interrupting him, but you also look lonely. Ace turned his head and looked at Luffy again, his face full of confusion. Didn't Luffy see hatred on his face? You look just like when I first met you, you always looked angry, but you look like the lonely I felt when I was alone as a kid and Luffy wasn't with me. I haven't seen you like this in a long time, so I was worried. But you don't look lonely now, so I don't have to worry, right? Luffy added. Ace sighed in relief at the explanation and then hit Luffy lightly on the head. Ouch! Luffy protested, but he just blinked when Ace put his arm around his shoulders and held him in a hug. Chapter 28. Idiot! Ace gently placed his chin on top of Luffy's head and whispered softly, you shouldn't worry about your brothers. He. Sorry. Luffy smiled embarrassedly. Ace stared at the fire in front of him silently, feeling the warmth of Luffy's body pressed against his side. It wasn't that cold, it felt warm in comparison to his other side somehow. Hey, Luffy! Ace knew Luffy would respond to him in an idiotic way, but he was still nervous about what he was about to say. Hey! Luffy turned and looked at Ace. You want me to be by your side, right? Ace asked. Yeah, Luffy replied, looking confused. No one else feels this way, Ace continued. You know nothing about your parents, right? I don't think I have parents, Luffy said. Ace rolled his eyes. That's not the case, but whatever, I know my parents and I don't want to talk about them, so don't interrupt me, okay? My father is the Pirate King, Ace said softly. He knew that this title would excite Luffy. Luffy's goal was the same, but for Ace this title only meant a person's notoriety and selfishness, which would always haunt him. He sensed Luffy's excitement, and he turned Luffy's head and carefully glanced at Luffy's expression, and suddenly he burst into laughter. Luffy's eyes were wide open, but he bit his lower lip hard, forming a funny big pout. Ace knew that this was Luffy's way of coping to prevent questions. But as soon as he saw Luffy's face, the anxiety and pressure of revealing his darkest secret disappeared without a trace. Stop laughing, Luffy couldn't help himself and frowned in annoyance. I tried not to interrupt. You said not to interrupt, and, I interrupted. Ace pulled Luffy closer and hugged him, laughing loudly. Luffy pouted more obviously, but he hugged him back with his rubber hands. I'm sorry, Ace chuckled, I just hate having anything to do with that guy. Those people said bad things about him before, you want to beat them up, right? Luffy said in a serious tone. Yeah, Ace replied, but not because I care what they think of him, but because if they knew who I was, they would hate me just as much. Oh, but Ace is Ace and Roger is Roger. No matter what, we will always be your brothers. You never have to worry about loneliness or sadness. Lucci, Sabo, and I will never hate you. Luffy nodded and said with a frown. Ace looked at Luffy, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. I know, Luffy, I know now. Can I ask questions now? Luffy said excitedly. No. But I want to know about your father. Luffy protested. I don't want to talk about him. I don't even know anything about him. Ace sighed. Luffy muttered, but Ace. Luffy, this topic is over. Ace said angrily. Looks like we came back just in time. Sabo asked, interrupting Luffy's mumbling complaints about wanting to know Roger's story. Yeah. Shut him up, I know it's a bad idea to tell him, Ace complained. Lucci was amused by Luffy's behavior. Luffy, Lucci said to Luffy as seriously as possible, don't bother Ace about this, otherwise you will make Ace unhappy. Luffy pursed his lips and sighed, then sucked his lower lip back in. He managed to hold back his question. Ace, Sabo, and Lucci wanted to laugh at Luffy's performance, but had to hold it back, otherwise Luffy would be angry with them again. Ace barely remembered what they talked about during the meal, and after they finished eating, they packed up and went into the treehouse to rest. Because the winter nights were much colder, they huddled close together, and Luffy fell asleep between them. Are you okay? Lucci asked as he tucked one of Luffy's sleeping arms under the blanket. Ace moved Luffy's other arm so that he rested it on his stomach. Yes, I am. Well, you have to know that he will be more interested in this than anything else, Sabo said with a smile, you don't have to worry about him commenting on it. I know, Ace sighed. Well, I think there's something I should tell you, Lucci said hesitantly. Hey? What's the matter? Is there any secret between us? Sabo said in confusion. How can there be any secrets between us brothers? Tell me, Lucci. Ace said seriously. Well, actually I know who Luffy and I's father is. Lucci said softly, looking at the ceiling of the treehouse. What? Ace and Sabo shouted in a low voice, looking at Lucci in surprise. Keep your voice down, don't wake Luffy up. Lucci said nervously, and then he breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that Luffy was still sleeping soundly. Monkey D. Dragon is the name of Luffy and me's father, Luffy muttered. Dragon? Sabo said in surprise. Sabo, do you know who it is? Ace asked in confusion. Well, I know he's a revolutionary, dubbed the world's worst criminal by the world government, Sabo replied. Well, yes, I heard from the old man that the world government regards Dragon as the biggest threat, which is more serious than Roger's threat. If this secret is exposed and known by the world government, Luffy and I will be in danger. That's why I haven't told you. Lucci continued, Luffy doesn't know about this either. I don't plan to tell Luffy. He trusts others too easily. I want you to help me protect Luffy. Of course. Luffy is our younger brother, Ace, Lucci, we have to become stronger for Luffy. Luffy and you will have many enemies, Sabo said seriously. Yet, although I'm still a little angry that you took so long to tell us, Lucci. Ace said to Lucci angrily. Ha ha ha. I forgot. Lucci's eyes turned to the other side. Liar. Ace and Sabo muttered together. Okay, good night, Ace, Sabo, Lucci said. Good night, Lucci, Ace and Sabo yawned in response. When Ace and Sabo fell asleep, Lucci opened his eyes and lay on the mat, thinking about what had happened recently. He turned his head to look at Luffy who was sleeping next to him. He looked at him with amusement as he continued to mumble about meat in his sleep. He pressed the quilt that Luffy had kicked away and left quietly. Lucci stood under the tree, looking at his own shadow, remembering the other ability of the shadow fruit that he had accidentally discovered before. Lucci stared at the shadow illuminated by the moonlight. Slowly, something seemed to be struggling to stand up in the darkness. Slowly, Lucci saw a black figure breaking out of his shadow. Lucci looked at the clear figure formed by the shadow in front of him. It looked like him, with the same height and appearance as him, just like his twin. Lucci looked at the figure in front of him. He discovered last time that the shadow he split out not only looked like him, but also had the same strength as him. He could even make better use of the shadow to travel around, probably because he himself was a shadow. I just don't know how many I can split. With his current strength, he can only split one. His intuition tells him that there can only be one shadow clone that can exist forever. But for what he wants to do, one should be enough. Thinking of this, Lucci stared at the figure in front of him and asked, Do you have a name? No, replied the figure who looked like Lucci. Then your name will be Chi from now on. Then Lucci looked towards the treehouse and said, You were born for Luffy. Your mission is to stay by his side and protect him. Before he becomes strong, protect him from any harm. As he said this, Lucci suddenly thought of what would happen if Luffy. Chapter 29. Knowing that I used the power of the devil fruit to have someone follow him to protect him, he will definitely be angry with me as his brother. I just need to not let him find out, Lucci thought happily. Don't let him find out that you are my clone and are protecting him, Lucci added. You are my clone, so do you have my memories and emotions? Lucci asked curiously. Yes, normally clones don't have emotions and memories, but since I was created by you using your own shadow, it's like you split off another self, so I have the memories before the main body, but after the shadow is separated, it is independent, so it no longer has your memories after that, but it will act according to your original instructions. Is that so? That means you are now a person who can think independently. Lucci thought for a while and asked. Yes. Lucci stroked his chin and thought, not knowing if this was the right thing to do, but he could feel that he could take him back. After all, this was his shadow anyway. Since you are me, I think you should know how to protect him best. Yes, Chi replied, we have the same memories and emotions, so my feelings for him are the same as yours, and I also have the desire to protect him like you. Chi added. This way I can protect Luffy even if I'm not by his side. Lucci thought. Lucci and Chi returned to the tree house. Lucci went back quietly and continued to lie down, while Chi walked to Luffy and went into Luffy's shadow to rest. Although Chi looked like a normal person, he was still a shadow after all. He could not come out for a long time and could only rest in the shadow. Lucci lay down again, his thoughts suddenly going back to a few months ago when he accidentally saw a person he had never seen before on the coast. He didn't know why he appeared on this small island, and he always had a bad feeling about the person's appearance here. Here it comes, the storm is coming. Ace shouted excitedly while standing in front of the rudder of the tree house. If you want to come, come harder. Sabo shouted from Ace's left. Ha ha ha. Come harder, we will defeat it, Lucci shouted excitedly while standing on Ace's right. Wow! The wind is getting stronger. Luffy climbed up and held the flagpole, looking forward. Luffy, please protect our flag well. Lucci said to Luffy excitedly. Don't let the pirate flag be blown away by the wind. Ace shouted to Luffy above. Losing the flag is a shame for pirates. Sabo shouted. Okay. The wind was getting stronger, and suddenly a strong wind blew Luffy up. Ah! Help! Luffy! Ace and Lucci shouted loudly, and Ace quickly ran to the place closest to Luffy. Ha ha ha! Luffy, what are you doing? Ace laughed as he watched Luffy holding the flag being blown away by the wind. Stop laughing! Come and save me! Luffy shouted. Awesome! We defeated the storm! Luffy said excitedly as he walked, holding his pipe. But the treehouse has become dilapidated. Sabo said helplessly. Ha ha ha, we can fix it again, Lucci grinned. Okay, let's go collect the materials. Ace raised the pipe in his hand easily and decided. I want a pair of binoculars. Luffy turned around and walked backwards looking at his brothers. Stupid, there's no way that thing could fall down, Ace said with a smile. If possible, it would be better if a cannon dropped, Sabo responded. It would be amazing if a cannon fell down. Lucci laughed at his brothers, and slowly he stopped laughing. He cautiously looked back at the woods he had just walked through, and felt a little strange, but he didn't find anything. Lucci. Sabo looked at Lucci in confusion as he suddenly stopped. Coming, coming. Lucci responded and quickly returned to his brothers. What's wrong? Sabo asked confusedly. Nothing, just a strange feeling. Lucci added, it shouldn't be anything, let's go. No, Ace, I can't find my binoculars. Luffy complained to Ace. Luffy, why are you looking for the telescope? We need to find materials. Ace looked at Luffy helplessly. Lucci listened to the voices of Ace and Luffy and shook his head helplessly. I've picked up so much, it should be enough, Lucci thought as he looked at the wooden board in his hand. Lucci was about to go back when he was suddenly attracted by a shining object near the city wall. Lucci walked closer and picked it up. It was the telescope that Luffy had been thinking about. I found the telescope. Luffy will be very happy, Lucci thought happily. Boom! Lucci was startled by the sudden sound of gunfire. He looked in the direction where the gunfire came from and realized that it was from the direction of Ace and the others. He stuffed the binoculars into his pocket and quickly ran towards them. Lucci saw many guards and Blosium's people surrounding Ace and the others. Ace and Luffy had been captured. Lucci saw Sabo standing in front of a noble he met last time and talking about something. Lucci found himself behind a rock and watching, planning to find a chance to rescue his brothers. Dad, that's enough. I promise. I will be obedient and do what you say. I just beg you, just please don't hurt these two people. Please, they are my important brothers. Sabo lowered his shoulders and promised his father. Damn it, Sabo. Lucci looked at this scene and couldn't help but want to rush out. Don't do this, Sabo. Hey, don't go. Don't agree. We'll be fine. Didn't we agree to pursue freedom together? Do you want to just let it go like this? Ace shouted at Sabo's back, hoping to stop Sabo from sacrificing himself for them. Sabo! Luffy cried out loudly. Sabo, damn it, I have to find a way to follow them and rescue Sabo. Lucci thought as he watched their backs walk away. Lucci looked at the shadows on the ground in deep thought, and suddenly thought of something, his lips curled up. Sabo, wait for me, I will bring you back. Lucci looked at Ace and Luffy and muttered, Ace, I believe you will be fine, Luffy is in your hands. Blue Jam had Ace and Luffy brought back to his ship, and then told his men, there's another kid, go find him and bring him here. Being born into a noble family is something you can only encounter by chance. It is simply a blessing from your previous life. If I could, I would really like to exchange with him. I dream of being born into a noble family. Blue Jam smiled arrogantly at Ace and Luffy, and added, I didn't expect that one of the infamous 4-member brat group is actually a noble. He must be looking down on you in his heart. Stop talking nonsense. Sabo is not that kind of guy. Ace retorted to Blue Jam angrily. Yes, we are brothers. Luffy shouted angrily at Bluesum. Haha, so that's it. Blue Jam laughed, pouring a glass of wine from the bottle in his hand, and continued, but you won't approach that guy again. If you are willing to listen, I won't have to get rid of you here. If you really treat him as a brother, then don't bother him anymore. But Sabo said he hates Gao Zhen. Luffy retorted loudly. Ace stood on the side of Luffy, slightly blocking Luffy, and silently observed Blue Jam's attitude. Forget about him quickly. This is the real way to treat him well. You will understand when you grow up. Blue Ziem frowned and looked at Luffy and continued, although you and I had a grudge because of Borhami, I will let bygones be bygones now. I admire the strong, and I happen to be short of manpower right now. Do you want to help me? Blue Ziem continued, as if he didn't even notice that they were angry. Ace and Luffy were a little surprised by Blue Ziem's sudden change of topic and didn't even react. Blue Jam looked at their reactions and chuckled, oh, it's an easy job, nothing dangerous. The smile on Blue Jam's face made Ace's hair stand on end. Blue Jam pointed to a point on the map and said, I have a map of the waste terminal here. You just move the things to the marked points and that's it. Blue Jam looked at Ace and said, well, what for? Chapter 30. I understand. How much do you want to pay? Ace stared at Blue Jam and said calmly in a serious voice. Ace, I feel so bad when Sabo is not here. Luffy complained. Lucci is not here either. Be patient, me too. Ace continued, Lucci is very strong. Since Blue Jam didn't find him, Lucci should be fine. But, Sabo. Luffy turned around and protested with the box on his head. No, Ace interrupted Luffy, I want to find him too. Ace knew that Luffy was easily deceived and rarely doubted anything his brothers told him, but Ace had to lie to him. When he thought about Luffy finding out, he became more defensive. But I don't know what true happiness is for Sabo. We'll see what the situation is. Sabo and Lucci are very strong. They won't be in danger. Sabo will definitely come back if he doesn't want to. Luffy didn't complain anymore as he moved the boxes, his only complaints were being hungry and simply crying out Ace's name. Let's go to bed, Ace muttered, we have a lot of work to do tomorrow morning, if you want more breakfast we want to wake up early. Okay, Luffy replied, silently crawling under the blanket. I wonder what Sabo and Lucci are doing. Luffy muttered quietly under the blanket. Luffy. Go to sleep. Didn't we agree to forget about Sabo and Lucci for a while? Ace said, gritting his teeth. Okay. Luffy sounded frustrated. He might be happier this way, Ace muttered quietly as he looked at the wood above him. I have to at least make Luffy believe that he is happy until I figure out a way to bring him back, Ace thought. Sob. Ace listened to Luffy's haggard voice and sat up again, ready to scold Luffy. Before he could say anything to Luffy, he saw that Luffy was already fast asleep, and his blanket did not completely cover him. Ace looked at Luffy sleeping, he watched for a few minutes more, sighed and covered Luffy with the blanket again. Goa Kingdom Jaijin Inspection Station. Sabo, tell us about how those two guys threatened you to join, Sabo's father said to Sabo. I can't tell. It has nothing to do with Ace and Luffy, said Sabo. What do you mean you can't tell? You won't be threatened by those two guys and not be allowed to tell, Sabo's father said with a gloomy face. They are not that kind of people. Sabo retorted loudly. If you have a criminal record, not only will your family's reputation in Jaijin be affected, but you will also be barred from entering Jaijin, said the guard who was checking. You were instigated by those two men and were forced to get involved in the violence, right, Sabo? Sabo's father said to Sabo in a gloomy voice. Sabo lowered his head and suppressed his expression in silence. Sabo, your two friends in the garbage mountain are still in the hands of the pirates. What to do with them is a matter of a word from me. If they are really that important, you should know now. You should think carefully about what to say. Sabo's father approached Sabo and whispered threateningly in Sabo's ear. Sabo stood up angrily and shouted to his father, "Didn't you promise me that you wouldn't hurt them? That's why I came back with you." Sabo turned to the guard who was questioning him and said loudly, "We dare to take responsibility for our actions. We all relied on our own consciousness." Snapped. Sabo fell to the ground after being slapped by his father, interrupting his unfinished words. Sabo's father took out a roll of Bailey and placed it on the guard's table. "Really, I'm unlucky to have such a stupid son." He added proudly, "You know what I mean, right? Parents are so pitiful." The guard looked at Bailey on the table with a smile on his face and added, "Don't worry, I'll take care of the transcript." Under the setting sun, Sabo lowered his head and stared at the house in front of him with empty eyes. Sabo didn't know how he got in. He walked into the previous room numbly. This house made him feel suffocated like never before. He stared at the book in front of him in a trance. In his mind, he repeatedly recalled the scenes of living with his brothers. He kept missing his brothers. This was not his home. His home was where his brothers were. "Hey! Brother, I heard that you are a fool. Your parents keep saying that about you behind your back." Sabo looked at the adopted noble child in front of him in silence. "But you are really lucky. Tomorrow night is burnable garbage day. If you stay in the garbage mountain, you will definitely die." The noble child continued to wave his hands arrogantly and said, "But for me, it is best that the biological son of this family cannot come back." "What did you just say? Explain it to me clearly." Sabo grabbed his collar angrily and shook him continuously. "Ah! What are you doing? You're rubbish. You stink. Let me go." The noble boy struggled desperately. "Are you going to burn down the uncertainty terminal?" Sabo grabbed the noble boy's collar and shouted in shock. "Yes, because you have been living in the garbage mountain, you don't know. It has been decided several months ago." The noble boy smiled proudly, "Do you know that the world government's inspection team is patrolling the East China Sea? They will come to this Goa kingdom in 3 days. The world nobles, the celestial dragons, are also on the ship this time. In order to please them, the royal family decided to burn the stain of this country. As long as the garbage mountain is gone, this country will be spotless." "What are you talking about? There are still many people living there. If this happens, everyone will have no place to live." Sabo shouted angrily. "Let me go." The noble boy broke free with an evil look on his face. "Didn't I tell you to burn all the stains on this country? Not even letting humans go?" Sabo murmured in shock. Sabo quickly put on his coat, took out his pipe from under the bed and jumped out of the window. "I'm going to investigate, it can't be true," Sabo thought, quickly moving through the alleys and coming to the door where the guard was working, listening to what the guard inside said. "Are all the arrangements for tomorrow complete? There must not be any negligence. We are safe. The only problem is whether the pirates can successfully ignite the garbage. They are spreading fuel and explosives all over the garbage mountain." Sabo listened in shock. It also involves the Blues pirates. It seems to be true, such a ridiculous thing. Sabo began to walk back, and continued to return to that house. He wanted to wait until tomorrow morning. He wanted to see what the situation on the street was tomorrow morning. He still couldn't believe it. "Good morning, Sabo, you must be the brother of the genius Stelly. I am a tutor," said a woman with a polite smile. Sabo didn't hear what they said. He was still immersed in what he heard yesterday. Everything is the same as before. Is it because no one knows? It's too quiet. What happened yesterday felt like a dream. I want to go to the street to see everyone's reaction. What? Sabo is not at home? That prodigal son. Search the entire Jajan for me. It's not that easy to get out of Jajan. Sabo's father shouted. Sabo breathed a sigh of relief as he saw the calmness of the streets. Everyone seems to be just like normal. Nothing has happened at all. Sabo found an old man who was drinking tea and asked, "Did you know that the garbage mountain is going to catch fire tonight?" "Of course I know about this, so what?" The noble uncle took a sip of tea leisurely and continued, "Whose child are you from?" Sabo looked at him in shock. He knew. Sabo turned and ran away in fear, and met an old grandfather who looked very kind. "Did you know that the garbage mountain will catch fire tonight?" "Ah! We know about the fire. It's something that everyone agrees on." The old man said to Sabo in a low voice with a kind smile on his face, "It would be bad if it got to the ears of people outside Jejin.